Hello and welcome back to the water. My name is Beast, and today we're back with the actual inside of Narita's skull. I mean, hello lady. Last time we finished Mitri's route, and that was a fucking doozy. The main character can the world things, and instead of the usual, I have Fragolino again. Just felt like something more on the fruity side when I was grocery shopping today. And, you know, this bottle was literally already collecting dust on the, like I picked it up and you can like see an actual like very slight film of dust on it. So I said, you know what? Let's just get that before it like becomes even dustier. Yeah, nice and fruity. Yeah, the way today will be romancing Hishia. So let's just get into it. I'm excited about this. I'm probably also gonna explain some more about how they first met. Radiant Wasteland, achievement unlocked. There's the rounded scenery of night. The road slithered between the hills like a snake. It was a place far from the city. There were no lights beyond that of the moon. A cross reticle was floating in my vision. My head was as cool and clear as ice. Not a blink. Even the slightest movement of the gun would become a sure miss for the bullet. Faint, silent breaths that seemed to melt into the surrounding forest. Breathe in, breathe out. Temperature, moisture, wind speed, gravitational forces. Sniper said to consider every single factor to be successful. The world didn't exist beyond the circular point. The world didn't exist beyond the circular point as big as a coin. Everything outside faded from consciousness.
全世界78億の自助ファンの皆さん、こんばんは。愛され系自助の輝ける星、石谷森です。人使いの荒いご主人様の命令で、スクール近郊の森の中に潜伏し、狙撃の機会を伺っているところです。バイポッドで固定したライフルのスコープから一旦顔を外して、腕の時計で時間を確かめます。そろそろですね。そう。最近お気に入りの深夜アニメ開始時刻になろうとしていました。ど田舎の奥島では放送されている番組も少ないのですが、ケーブルテレビや動画サイトに公式配信されているものもありますので、シーズンのメインは抑えられます。ここで視聴というわけにはいきませんが、録画はしているので安心です。さて、事前調査のタイムスケジュール通りなら、スクールを脱出した花園武士があの道を猛スピードで降りてくる頃合いでした。おそらく車で逃走してくるでしょう。その車両を狙撃して奴の足を奪い、成田様との面会に向かってもらうのが今宵の菱屋のお仕事。人使いの荒い主人です。まったく。この大役の獲物はレミントン M700。精度を要求されるお仕事ですので、ボルトアクション式を選びました。あらゆる下準備はすでに済ませてあります。ヒシアとしてはドラグノフの方が慣れていますが、手に入りにくかったのでやむを得ません。この国では米軍流れの武器が一番お手軽ですからね。アメリカ製の銃器はロシアの武骨さやドイツのスマートさがなく、どこか大味な感じがして手のひらにぴったりフィットしてくれません。個人的にはいまいちです。
When it comes to lines like that, I always have to like, okay, just take a screenshot and show that to the person I know. Whoops. Interesting, so that's what that button does. Oh, that's the wrong screenshot. Shit. That's the Steams. There's the Steams. Ah, the fucking writing is vanishing in the middle of vanishing on that one. That's not what I wanted to open. Back. Yoink that. Grab that. Copy it. There we go.
まあドラグノフは頑丈でも精度は高いとは言えないので、スペックだけならもっと適切なものがあるでしょうが、実戦で使うには慣れや相性も重要ですから。イシアの故郷では北の大きな国からいろんな武器が大量に持ち込まれたりしていました。日本のことわざにある昔取ったカラカサというやつですね。夜間山道を爆走してくる車両へのピンポイントスナイプ、ぶち殺すだけなら簡単なのですが、花園と決着をつけるのは成田様。殺さず足止めとなると狙撃の難易度は格段に上がります。ご主人様みたいなびっくりドッキリデタラメ人間と違って普通の次女のヒシアとしては苦労が多いです。とはいえ今夜の想定距離は最大800フィート。ヒシア的には目をつむってても当てられる距離ですが、まあ本当につむったらダメですけどね。夜間暗視装置は使いません。ものにもよりますがかさばって鬱陶しいのです。夜間狙撃とはいえ今夜はほぼ満月。素でも大丈夫。細かいことは風が教えてくれます。イシアには結構たくさんの姉妹がいて全員できるウーマンでしたが、狙撃はヒシアが一番お得意でした。いよいよ開幕の時間が迫ってきました。お話はここまでにしてお仕事。
Nocturnal bird let out a crawl as the wind stopped. A moment later, my deadbeat master Shindini Narita appeared, having broken out of Tenkawa Noble Academy, the enemy's stronghold.
お待ちしておりました、成田様。
予定よりも5分ほど遅れてしまったが、修正可能な範囲内だろう。
It appeared without making a single branch make a sound. It was as absurd as usual. Even people like me had trouble sensing him.
はい。イシアが鬱陶しい虫刺されと対決しながら森の中でスコープとにらめっこしている間、ご主人様は楽しい夜会で美味しいお料理と格闘中だったというわけですね。
人聞きの悪いことを言うものではない。夜会の音楽に耳を傾けながら揺れる神の宝満を神秘する閲楽。いわば芸術の魅力から離れられなかっただけなのだから。
It was extremely awful as a human, but this kind of absurdity was about what I'd expect from him, so I didn't even point it out.
状況はすべて滞りなく。
And a graceful maid-like manner, I presented him something wrapped in a purple cloth. He accepted it with a dignified, know-it-all face. Under the cloth, there was a gun. A Luger POA, to be exact. The retro weapon was a special tool that would be used for tonight's ritual. It's a special tool that'll help us later. A ritual of the revenge. It was a sacred act that Master Narita tried to commit. So that was the reason why he changed his name and returned to the country of Japan, the place of his bloodstained past. It was so that he could deliver the hammer of justice onto Kurofune and his co-conspirators who betrayed and killed his family.
今夜ようやく本当の意味で待ちに待った舞台が始まりを告げるのだ。
He whispered that as if to convince himself, and there was no sign of doubt in his face. Over the past 7 years, he had never once wielded his power for the sake of his hate, or in his mind, it would mean becoming the same as the lowly beasts he had consigned to oblivion. That will change tonight. In fact, all that happened until now was for the sake of what will happen from this night forward. Yet truly resolved to do this. It made him seem dependable, but I also felt a hot express desolation in my heart. It was much like a hole in my heart through which dry wind blew freely. I had no time to think about anything so unnecessary. The time was nigh, so I would merely wait for Hanazono. I became prone to prepare for the shot and fix my sight on the road. As I prepared, I looked up to see Master Narita clench his fist hard. Was he really set on doing this? Wasn't there another path he could still take? That thought made me unable to stay silent.
成田様、計画の変更はございませんか？
ない。すべては定められた通り。この夜より役者どもを競争させよ
う。承知いたしました。
Indeed, he wasn't hesitant at all. Maids were meant to serve their masters, and they would become akin to his limbs and stay with him until the end. Hanazono's car went down the road. Everything was proceeding as planned so far.
様子がおかしい。追われているのか。
The car was going at breakneck speed. He must have considered the possibility that he might have been chased even after he broke out of the academy. Where's the chaser, though? I don't see any cars behind him or helicopters above.
追っているのはチュパカブラの親戚でしょうか？
When Master Narita and I had gone to South America, we had actually encountered the chupacabra, fearsome creature with a taste for human blood. Besides that, there was the giant eyeless creature that crawled around deep underground, the island-sized ship that floated in the Atlantic. The world was full of wonders many didn't know about. Was it possible that the chaser was inhuman?
まさかだ。
An instant response, albeit sprinkled with uncertainty. He was right, however. Wonders of this kind could only exist because they found a home outside the realm of man. Something like that could never be this close to a human settlement, rural or not.
成田様。
Before I could even point at it, a small silhouette fell down from the top of the cliff with the dexterity of a primate. With unbelievable ease, it went down while using the trees as platforms before beautifully landing on the car that was going at 100 kilometers per hour. What was that? I could tell from this distance. It was about as big as a human, but those movements certainly didn't fit the human template.
撃ち落とせ。私は花園を追う。
Master Narita was quick to decide what to do next. Whatever the thing was, regardless of whether it was the academy or not, it was an enemy for merely targeting Hanazono.
かしこまりました。
Master Narita kicked off the undergrowth and ran, almost fell down the steep slope in order to catch up to Hanazono. And I had to do what I was ordered to with absolute perfection. If I stopped Hanazono, he would end up in the monster's hands, and that would go against our plan. I had Hanazono's location down. Best time would be next sharp turn when he would have to slow down whether he liked it or not. Fixing sights, different color across the reticle. Told me the moment it would come more in my eyes, but the skin, whispers of the mountain wind. Pulled the trigger without hesitation.
命中。
Whoops. A muzzle flash appeared in the darkness between the trees, and the fired bullet hit the mysterious target. I pulled the cocking bolt to take out the shell and prepare the net to fire again. The darkness still concealed the silhouette's identity, but it didn't matter as long as it died. Thanks to the energy from the sharp turn, the shadow fell off the roof of the speeding car. However, it wasn't where it was supposed to have fallen.
いやいや、どんな化け物ですか？
It suffered a direct hit from a rifle bullet and fell off the car, yet it didn't lose any mobility and it somehow avoided becoming mincemeat on the asphalt, letting it escape. It was very surprising. The fact that any normal human would have definitely died there.
びっくりドッキリ生もののようですね。
Not thinking anything more, I picked up the Remington and ran. monster far beyond the norm wasn't something I liked having as an enemy serving the academy, but I'd completed my goal for now. However, my original job still remained, so I went to the second sniping nest I prepared. Thanks to that monster, I'd lost my chance to shoot Hanazono. However, if he made it out of this night alive, he would become a lot more defensive, possibly escaping, where it would be difficult to target him. Wouldn't allow that. I would do all it took to bring the target to Master Narita.
ご奉仕させていただきます。
I jumped off the steep slope and grabbed onto the trees on the way to slow myself down before landing. I sped through the darkness and broke through the grove until I came across a mountain pass. Didn't have time to lay down on the sniping nest. I merely kneeled, turning my left knee and arm into support for the gun. I raised the rifle at about the same time as Hanazono's car appeared in the sight. I instantly stabilized the gun and pulled the trigger.
命中。銃弾は狙い通り。暴走する花園の車のタイヤを吹き飛ばしました。ガードレールを打ち壊しながら草むらへ出て、道路との段差で派手に横転し、天地逆さの状態で地面をこすってようやく止まりました。これであとは成田様のされるべきこと、ヒシアも手出しのできない聖なる儀式です。空にはほぼ満ちた月がさえざえと輝いて、我々のアクセク全てを見下ろしていました。お気に入りの深夜アニメシリーズはそろそろアバンタイトルも終わり、ここから本編の始まりとして景気よくオープニングテーマが流れ出している頃でしょうか。
And opening. Bit on the nose, don't you think? You know, just because I like the soundtrack, I'm just gonna listen to it again. I'm just gonna turn off the webcam and listen. Lovely. Also, I got a message from the person I sent the screenshot earlier.
十分な時間を置いてから成田様の後を追いました。
Their response, agreed, depends on the time period and weapon class. So apparently, yes, Americans, the fucking country so crazy about guns, sucks at guns. That is mildly funny to me. Also, they are currently struggling because they keep starting to type and then stopping to type and then starting to type and then stopping to type and then starting to type again. Also, they apparently really don't like Glock. Oh, hi.
復讐の時は成田様が過去と対話する大切なお時間。事情ごときが邪魔してはなりません。
Okay, they elaborated. See, for shit like old school SMGs, the Americans wins with stuff like the Thompson. But at the same time, they also own High Point, which are guns that regularly go for about $80 to $100. Absolute dog shit. Also, yes, this person plays Girls Frontline. MDR is one of their favorite girls. And that's mainly because one of their favorite character types is just smug gremlin.
決着の場へ向かいたくなるのをこらえ、木立の闇の中で佇みながら待ちます。やがて。
Gunshot rang out into the night sky. At the time I came to him, he had already finished what had to be done. The gun in Master Narita's hand was releasing smoke. Next to his feet, there was Hanazono's dead body.
かくして第一幕は終わりを告げた。ヒア、すぐに次の舞台の準備にかかる。
You know what? Just in case, take a screenshot. I could use this as the thumbnail.
はい。
Master Narita was staring right at Hanazono's death mask, a face full of shock and fear. Was though he was trying to take in all the hate from the person he had just murdered.
成田様を見ていると、どこかが小さく痛むような気がします。いつの間にか自分の胸に手を当てていました。ここに来て、イシアこそがまだ完全に覚悟を決めきれていなかったことに気づいてしまったのです。
It was far too late for me to philosophize about the value of life or whatnot. I'd already taken too many lives to count. In fact, when it came to a number alone, my hands were far more bloody than Master Narita's.
恐れていたのです。成田様が本当の意味で復讐者に変わってしまうのを。
I didn't quite understand the intensity of the feelings which drove a person to swear to kill another at the expense of oneself.
あるいは、もしも。
I'd considered this and that, but I could only imagine the piercing pain in the heart. If that was all he ever felt whilst living all these years, revenge must have been the only true path for him. However, I wondered if he could find a way of life that didn't lead to him burning as firewood for the flame of vengeance. However, that was no longer possible.
成田様は振り返らない一歩を踏み出された。 イシアは付き従うだけです。
I mean, it kind of stopped in 2 of the routes. Again, it gave up in... After... Like, it kind of just gave up after Kurofune was murdered by Taigi in Tamo's route. Then, in Soroko's route, after having killed 3 of the 4, he decides to chase after Soroko instead of killing Kurofune. Then, in Eru's route, I guess you can say that he... Actually, no, I think Soroko's dad still lived. No, Soroko's dad died in that one. Soroko's dad should still live in... No, Soroko's dad should still live in Iru's route. He's dead in Saku's route. In Saku's route, however, he completely fulfills his revenge by his own fucking hands. So, yeah. Just like Master Narita would do nothing but move forward, I also had no other way of life. I was quite awkward after all. I gave him the most maid-like bow.
ここは我々の旅路の果て。長い遍歴を経て行き着いた終わりの始まり。そろそろどうしてヒシアと成田様がこんなところにいるのか説明するのに少し時間を遡りましょう。まあ大雑把な説明ですので、詳しいことを知りたい方は各自別途資料をご覧ください。それでは回想です。
A pleasant black, the color of the sky. It wasn't quite pitch black. There were some city lights giving it a brighter, different hue. Shinji Narita's loyal maid, Morihishia, was walking through the darkness with casual steps as though strolling around.
Hishia, 見たまえ。日本の星空だ。成田とは違って、ここではよく見える。
ああ、そうでございますね。
The master was acting as he pleased, just like he always did. Nishia gave him a response that was as half-hearted as usual. It wasn't like she was ignoring him, but they had exchanges like these for years now. Fukushima in Prefecture was a rural town like many others in Japan. It had a population of only about 200,000 people, so the light pollution was far smaller than it was in Chiba or other cities on the main island. Because of that, albeit not quite fully, the sky had lots of stars in it. The flickering lights were akin to gems decorating in the sky. And lording over them was a 16-day-old moon, which rained a unique and orange light upon the surface. It was late at night, so the silence was strong as well. Scattered forests made no sound. You couldn't even hear any bugs. The master and maid were walking in a path far from the town and its light. There was no hesitation in their steps, making it clear that they knew where they were heading.
7年ぶりの故郷の星。階級の心地とはこれか。飛行機の手配を誤って深夜に到着しなければ、こんな気分を知ることもなく、かの地へ着いていたな。
This was Morihishia's first time here, but to Shinji Narita, this is where he was born. Though he had a different name back then. It had been 7 years since he had been chased away from his homeland. And after a long, winding road, he finally returned, bearing only a single goal in his heart.
忠実で愛すべき次女の失敗のいちいちをあげつらう慎みなき主人を持てて、ヒシア、とっても幸せです。
これでも褒めているのだよ。
はーん、とってもうれっぴー。ご主人様に褒められちゃった。
君が喜んでいるのを見ると私も嬉しい。喜怒哀楽を包み隠さず明らかにするのが。
皮肉を理解しやがらないご主人様の面の顔の厚さに毎度ながらひしやいーってなっちまいます。
It was originally planned that they would arrive here tomorrow morning. Thanks to a rare mistake from his capable maid, they'd arrived here a day earlier while it was still night. Normally would expect them to find a hotel and wait for the morning there. Normally would expect them to find a hotel and wait for the morning there. But instead, Knight chose to walk to his destination, Tenkawa Noble Academy. It was far too late for buses to be active. Reasonably, it wasn't close enough to go there by foot, but Hishia's master was quite a stranger to common sense, so he didn't seem to care. They left the town behind them, and the path they walked eventually became sloped upwards. It was more or less a mountain pass now, but neither continued without slowing down or showing signs of fatigue.
これは言うなればあれです。ご主人様にしては珍しいですが、流行っておられるのかもしれません。
She walked 3 steps behind him and pondered. As long as this road seemed, it was nothing compared to the intense, difficult path he walked. It was akin to going shopping in a neighborhood marketplace. This journey of his had changed Shishia's without repair. Oh lord, a flashback within a flashback, you say. Dry air, smell of burnt sand, gunfire instead of chipping birds, sudden unreasonable deaths that came from nowhere. That was the kind of land Mori Hishia grew up in. Her childhood memories were vague. All that she really recalled was that she lived off tasteless, rock-like bread. She was bought by her first master before she even knew left from right. There were people who had a thing for girls and boys far below their adolescence, but for better or worse, Hishia was valued in a different way. It led to the man building her up into a tool, a beautiful weapon. What he sought from her was killing prowess and the ability to protect them. Her days were devoid of human emotion. The master didn't need anything like that either. After all, who would want their swords and shields to have their own ideas and convictions? Hishia wasn't the only weapon, however. Some were dysfunctional in certain ways, but their fate was quite simple. Like any broken tool, that would be simply disposed of. Hishia had been in many dangerous situations. In her memories, she found a teacher wearing a face akin to rock salt and giving her orders with a hard-to-understand voice.
今日、お前は失敗した。食事はその宇治と雲だ。今飲んだ水には薄い病毒が混ぜてある。高熱と嘔吐と下痢が出るだろう。この娘と話をしていたそうだな。丸一日時間をやる。できるだけ時間をかけて殺せ。
Hishia did everything she was told with little issue. She was a gun, her master's orders came above all else. As a tool made of metal, she would draw the blood of his enemies. Oh, how happy she would have been if she could have become that. For better or worse, Hishia had an aptitude, and that wasn't just a talent that had her master turn her into a weapon. She had a talent for creating herself, regardless of how hopeless the world around her was. How little teaching she received, how inhumanely she was treated, how little light there was in her life. Perhaps it was a bit juvenile to be called a personality. Faint as it was, Mori Hishia was the only one among her sisters to remain a non-weapon. Her trigger fingers didn't hesitate, but her heart still ached. Even if she didn't hesitate to stab someone, she knew that a life taken couldn't be returned. At some point, her memories became vague. She eventually began processing everything like she was part of the audience cheering for the tragic comedy of life playing out before her. It was the only way she could bear it all. The empty season that felt like a long breath of sandy wind seemed to continue forever. And then, at the end of the days, she stopped counting. A hand reached out to her.
ところでヒシア、
She was brought back from her trip down memory lane by the strangely emotional voice of her master.
どうかされましたか？傲岸不遜、わがままなご主人様にしては、心配そうな顔をしていらっしゃいますが、猫の血でも踏んじゃいましたか？
いや、少し疑問に思っただけなのだよ。この国の学園では、就職時、非常な混乱の中で学生同士が食物を奪い合って、血で血を洗う争いを繰り広げると以前読んだことがある。食の豊かなこの国で、どうしてそんな悲劇があるのだろうか。
Despite having no openings, Shinri Narita was very rough around the edges. Combined with his cruel childhood, it made him quite detached from anything obvious. If Hishia wasn't there to fix some little details, he would be a truly sad individual who couldn't function in society. Thus, Hishia had perfectly mastered the art of basic living in Japan, all so she could help her helpless master. After fixing her posture in an unorthodox UK retro style, the maid responded to
簡単でございます。学園という世界には、スクールカーストと呼ばれる過酷な階級性が敷かれているのだとか。搾取される最下層の学生たちは、日々の食を得るのも簡単ではないのでしょう。
悲しいことだな。このような豊かな国でも、食料をめぐる争いは尽きないのか。
Her master's face became serious, filling Hishia with pride in her own answer.
食料をめぐる争いといえば、以前難民に食料を届ける依頼を引き受けたことがあったな。反政府軍の戦線を突破するのに大層苦労したが。
確かにありました。いざ物資を運び込んだら、それを狙って野党まがいの連中までヒャッハーとやってきやがったのをご主人様が血祭りに。食をめぐる闘争の無残さとご主人様の非常さに医師や大粒で涙いたしました。
待ちたまえ。あの時平和主義的にネゴシエイトをしていた私の後ろからいきなり迫撃砲を撃ち込んだのはヒシアではなかったかね。
ご主人様が連中を止めろとおっしゃいましたので、できたメイドが意を組んだのです。ほら、ああいう世紀末な連中が話してわかるわけねえじゃないですか。時はお高いと申します。無駄な時間は省略で。
君は実に良いメイドだが、もう少し一般常識を学ぶ必要がありそうだな。
ご主人様にそれを指摘されるのは、ヒシア、超ショックです。死ねる。
しかし、明日から学生の身分になる私は、再び過酷な食の闘争を行わねばならないわけか。
かの学園は、超ゴージャスな成金趣味なので、残念ながらそのような場面は見られないと思います。せいぜいロスのタッグで並ぶ程度ではないかと。
それは一安心だ。貴重な日本の風習に触れられないのはいささか残念だがね。
Looking at the feet of her talking master, Hishia pondered. He had been walking for the past 7 years for the sake of this day alone. What drove Shinri Narita was a hate and rage only known as vengeance. He returned to his place of birth to take everything from the 4 traitors who had taken everything from him. As the first step towards that, he infiltrated the Tenkawa Noble Academy, the fortress of his nemesis as a student. He would live right under the enemy and begin his long-desired battle.
成田様、最後までお供します。
Hishia looked up at the pleasant night sky once more. The moon's strong orange color had faded, making it shine as beautifully as golden plate.
最初の復讐劇が果たされてから1週間ほどが過ぎたでしょうか。多少の悶着はあったものの、成田様は無事にスクールの一員としての生活を続けておられます。学生ではないヒシアといえば、奥島市内で今日も豆々しく 絶賛活動続行中でした。
I looked up the high ceiling and checked the state of this church hall, which remained dreary and dark even in the light of noon. This church was the place we used as a base of operations here in Fukushima. It was quite old, but unlike most churches in Japan, this one was built to last. It's taken quite a bit of time to secure a place like this. Our base had to be in Fukushima, be well hidden from Kurofune, have space for the various items we would store. And finally, it had to suit Master Narita's tastes, as the maid had to fill each and every single one of the criteria.
成田様は万事に派手好きな方ですし、ハードボイルドには境界がつきものなのです。鳩が好きな映画監督もそういうことを言ってたような気がします。
I spoke to the emptiness in the same tone I would speak to others. I actually had a habit of talking to myself like so, and it might have been something that developed due to the lonely days of my youth. It was like a shadow in my heart. Through all the hard work, I secured this more or less satisfactory property. For a hideout, it stood out quite a bit, but it let us conduct our operations without any problems. Master Narita seemed fond of it as well. It was quite sturdy as well, so we could also buy time in case we were in a worst case scenario.
しかし成田様は無事に学生生活を営んでおられるでしょうか。
In all honesty, I was quite worried. After all, on the first day after coming here, he was greeted by Sako Tanashi, a pair of boobs he was very devoted to. It was well known by now that he was an absurd, oftentimes troublesome character who didn't read the mood. Thanks to him doing various things that would not be named here, Sako Tanashi ended up calling him a pervert, and that was very justified. Anyway, I will now begin my next job. Didn't have to babysit my annoying master, but that didn't mean that I could just walk around town and enjoy what it had to offer. As a good maid, I had been working hard to prepare for the second act, and that was more or less done. Master Naita's revenge tragedy. Its second target was none other than...
そろそろ一休み入れましょうか。
All was going according to the plan we'd arranged the moment it was decided that Master Naita would go to the academy. My Master Narita was working hard towards his goal in the academy. I was busy with work that had to be done outside, and the revenge tragedy was going smoothly so far. With Takeshi Hanazono leaving the stage, 3 targets were left. Master Narita would lead the next one by himself, and my job here was to create a net to chase him into. In the faint, ever-dusty darkness of a certain room in the church, there was a laptop lighting up the surroundings with its pale light. Did some light editing on the message I had typed down and pressed the send button. Using the power of the internet, I was working towards taking the wealth of the second target, Shinzan Katsuragi, and completely cornering him.
すべて滞りなく。
Most of Master Narita's targets were people he knew. That might have been why the hatred born out of betrayal was so deep.
メイドとしては差し出がましい考えでしたね。気分転換に外出でもしましょうか。
He had sworn to go through with this, and it was my role as his maid to help him fulfill his desire. I turned off the laptop and closed it. I had to manage our funds, gather information, negotiate with businesses and financial institutions, clean up the hideout. Compared to my master, who was enjoying his youth in a prestigious school, I had to do quite a lot. However, people were meant to be free and to enjoy this freedom. Those were Master Narita's own words. I regularly made some time for myself. I didn't have any plans for the rest of the day, which was quite a rarity. It wasn't healthy to just sit in this semi-ruin and get lost in thought, so I would just aimlessly walk around and enjoy myself. It was a bit early, but a lunchtime event seemed quite attractive right now. I liked making food myself, but I also liked eating outside. If I came across something good, I could add it to my own repertoire. A local had told me that a place called Okushima Odori had some good chicken.
そうですね。今日の昼食はチキンがいいかも。
The world was full of cooking that used chicken. Even the place I was raised in had these chicken kebabs. It was a dish that was basically just chicken meat on skewers, carelessly cooked over a flame. The smell of melting fat was very enticing. It was quite a luxury for me back there. Rock salt worked to make it even more juicy. The church was a short way outside town, so there were no establishments nearby. If I wanted to eat out, I had to go closer to the center and the Fukushima station. As I casually walked towards the downtown, I became aware of just how wealthy this country was. This was only a rural area, yet it was more well-ordered than many of the lands Master Narita visited in the past. The Japanese were said to be a people that, if in groups, could do something unpredictable, and they were quite skilled in the art of improving quality of life to raise it to the average level. Despite the time of day, I wanted something sweet, so I stopped by the convenience store, the essence of Japanese aspirations, and bought some cheesecake sticks that I ate on my journey. A great grand sweetness and pleasant feeling of it melting in my mouth. Being mere sticks, they were easy to eat, and they were packaged to prevent the hands from getting dirty.
これほどのものが1ドル程度で売ってるとは。日本人、マジどういう神経してるのでしょうか。
Hishia just sitting there like, what the fuck is wrong with these people? This is fucking bliss. Looked up to see blue sky with clouds gently floating through. The shine made me yawn and made her want to yawn, while the time made me want to take a nap. Just how precious was this piece. The Japanese built it up, enjoyed it, preserved it without knowing its value at all. Such outsider-like thoughts went through my head.
おや、メイドさんではないですか。
I was approached by Miss Eru Takazaki. Didn't have many acquaintances here, so I knew this girl from her being a school friend of Master Narita's. She was also the local who told me about the grand chicken.
これは高崎様。このようなところでお会いするとは珍しいですね。
Last time we'd met, Master Narita had helped her sneak out of the academy, so it was quite a strange situation. I'd heard that she was the youngest among those dwelling in the same dome as Master Narita, but her compactness combined with her pretty face made her look even younger than she was. She was as lovable as a doll, though she certainly wasn't what Master Narita would prefer. But then I meant the very specific part of the body.
石谷、日本の学生は月曜日から金曜日の間、囚人のごとく監禁されて勉学に励むと伺っておりましたが、そうではないのですか？
Wasn't a day off, and even if it was, the academy was a cruel place that was highly strict about about who could leave. You had to go out of your way to get a permission. Despite that, Mr. Takazaki was walking around outside like so. What was this about?
今日の自分は講義を自主的に開けて外出許可を取り遠征に来たのです。なぜと問われれば自分は答えるでしょう。
Whoops. The word expedition told me all I needed to know. She'd also gone shopping back when Master Narita snuck out of the
で
academy.
は
Snuck her out
本
of the
日の
academy.
スクールでは手に入らないようなお宝をお買い求めに。
おさようです。お買い求めに来ました。今日はいろいろなものの発売日なので、趣味人たるもの、発売日には自ら足を運ばねばなりません。
お見事な心情でございます、高崎様。
I pay my respect to the show of will with a maid-like bow.
それでですね、全裸で寮の廊下を歩いてくるわ。おっぱいをもみしだくことにごくわずかな罪悪感もないわで。
成田様は昔からそういうわがまま傲慢身勝手な方なのです。
I ended up accompanying her on her expedition. Why, you wonder? It just happened. Nothing more. I had time today, so I didn't mind. Miss Takazaki was a local, which made her quite knowledgeable about the area, and I learned a lot from her. This was just another job I had as a maid. I had to gather information in order to be of use to Master Narita when he needed me.
メイドさんぐらいになると、妖怪父もみーのケツをしばき回して言うこと聞かせたりできますか？
Oh no、無理です。お尻にショットガンをぶち込んでも、かの主は決して父に対する態度を改めることはないでしょう。
超最悪です。
そうです。まあ割と最悪です。
Miss Takazaki wasn't very expressive, but that just made her more lovable, like a figure. It felt like we had something in common, and I had absolutely no trouble talking to her.
でもですね、成田みたいな尊大なタイプが誘い受けの方がいいんですよ。基本スタンスなのです。人によっては譲れないラインになりますが。
Why are they suddenly talking about this?
いえいえ、やはりヒシアは攻めだと思います。刹那の快楽の中であれ、成田様は自分の意志を他人に握られたがらないでしょうし。
Why are these two... Somehow during this expedition, we began analyzing the mental workings of Master Narita. Some may wonder why this was happening, but I found it to be a most natural outcome. The concept of top and bottom was a highly important concept in any literature. Japanese literature had origins in ancient martial arts, and in modern times it had branched out into many branches and was still creating serious bloody conflict. For a non-Japanese myself, the nuances of the concepts were hard to explain, but basically the top was in charge while the bottom was being dominated. It was like the serving right in volleyball and the like. That seemed most easy to understand. Though, just so you know, neither I nor Miss Takazaki were much into that sort of thing. It just happened that we ended up talking about it.
そこが甘いのです。成田のような一見偉そうに振る舞う意志の強そうな手合いこそ誘い受けがスタンダードと思うのです。ですね、例を挙げるとこんな感じです。
Oh no.
しんちゃん、僕は君を本当に強く求めてるから、きっと征服してみせるよ。
I'll be right back. Alright, I'm back, and the convo has extended past the absolute dogshit high point guns. And the Germans have the absolute beauty that is the War 2000, but they lost to themselves because they made like 4 greedy little bitches. This person has complained to me multiple times that she can't find any way to get a WA 2000. The WA 2000. Like, this person really wants one of those, but just cannot find it. Anyways,
征服大義よ、お前がこの成田真理を征服する。やっ
しん、
がば、究極合体みたいな。
She didn't have a better person in mind, so she used Taigi Mikado, but I like that casting choice. By the way, I met him by accident back when I first visited the academy. Miss Takazona's oration made it quite easy to picture the happening. I even created a mental image that could run for at least half an hour, but that didn't mean that I would just accept this.
待ってください。イシアはこうだと思うのです。
Why is this conversation still going?
太陽、君はもっと明敏な男だと。
ん？それはどういうことかな？まさか、しんちゃん、君は
今さら気づいても遅いのだよ。こ
何
か
しんちゃん、こんなに。
ガバ、うおー、思考合一という。
やりますね、メイドさん。そちらのケースも非常に興味深いです。
なんと奥深い文化であることか。まだまだ思考実験の余地がありそうですね。
Suddenly, Miss Takazaki fell silent as though turned off. Perhaps that was just that was an impertinent comparison.
どうかされましたか？
この場にミトリもいればよかったと思っていました。
No, probably would have been better if I went for the route where Mitori is dead first, so I don't get even like slightly more attached to her. She wasn't rich in expression, but I felt like I could see a hint of sadness in her eyes. What a blunder on my part. Because of the flow of the conversation, I had no choice but to ask now.
その方はどうかなさったのですか？
少し前にスクールを辞めてしまいました。
余計なことを伺ってしまい、もし。
いいえ、良いのです。
兜山みどり様がどうなったのか、本当は知っているのですよ。高崎様、成田様から調べるように命じられましたから。本当はどうなってしまわれたのか、高崎様は悲しまれるかもしれません。知って嘆くのと知らずに笑うのと、もしかすると本当に似ているのかもしれない。でも成田様の正体が発覚するような言動は慎まねばなりません。真実は胸の中だけに、そ知らぬ顔で沈黙を通すことにいたしました。
Miss Takazaki's passion and devotion to subculture was something grand. It began with a specialized store at an old town street, then went to take a look at a large bookstore and a DVD shop at a department store. After that, we headed to the station before continuing to the Hokkai bookstore in a back alley shopping area. The expedition involved strolling window shopping and the checking of the notable points in the town. Oh, by the way, as I mentioned it earlier with the Southern Comfort, the reason why I drank that is that I literally randomly saw this open can of like Southern Comfort in the kitchen. I was like, hey, why the fuck's that just there? And like, because it was standing weirdly, I thought it was Captain Morgan. So I was like, why the fuck's there like a fucking Captain Morgan can just sitting there? Oh, no, it's not. My mother's just like, oh no, that's not Captain Morgan. That's some Southern Comfort. It was like it came with like something else we bought, and I tried it, and it was not good. It had like fucking carbonation, and it did not taste well. So I decided, you know what, fuck it, I'll try it, and it ended up tasting okay. So I just drank it since it was only like 3 days old, and it's fucking alcohol. The only thing I would have had to worry about is if there's a fly in there. So I poured it into a glass, and lo and behold, there was no fly in there. So it was safe to drink. And it was good. Just that carbonation had escaped by that point. But yeah, By the time we were done walking around, it was far past lunchtime. In fact, it was nearly evening.
サブカルチャー。人間たるもの、カルチャーを敬わねばなりません。そして、飽和するサブカルチャーはこの国が生んだアングラ文化の頂点の姿。
結局アングラなのですか？
サブカルチャーはサブだからこそ美しく育つのです。大輪のバラではない複雑厳妙なわびとさび。そう、道端に咲くタンポポの輝き。メジャー化してしまえば、その時には最も大切なカルチャー的魂が失われてしまう。メジャーはメジャーゆえに大衆性の束縛から逃れられないのですから。
Yup. Ms. Takazaki seemed to have some strong opinions about subculture, and it seemed to me far more profound than I realized.
まあ、それはこっちに置いておいて。メイドさん、少し早いですが、晩ご飯にしませんか？
大賛成です。
I had skipped lunch today after all. Could go for 3 days without food, but every proper human should eat when they could. Thus, we ended up eating out. She was a local, so we went to a place she recommended. It was a Western restaurant called Kai Kai Kitan, and it supposedly had a long history here, and was only a few minutes away straight from the station. The building was snug and white, and welcomed you with a refined-looking sign and a wooden door. It was more gracious than it appeared outside, and there were about 10 tables around. Apparently, there were private rooms as well, but we merely sat at the table we were led to.
ディナーはコース料理までいろいろありますが、ここのおすすめはこれ。ビーフシチュー。ワインでよく煮込まれた肉の旨味、柔らかさ爆発のジュルジュルですよ。
ほうほう。
Whoops. I traveled alongside Master Narita for a long time. I walked by. I knew well by now that you always had to follow the local customs. Thus, I ordered what Miss Takazaki recommended, as well as a pasta with chicken and tomato sauce. There was a saying when in the trenches, keep your head down. In other words, funding the breasts of whoever you came across could get you arrested.
メイドさん、簡単に食べる方なのですか？
食べられるときに精一杯食べねばなりません。高崎様もどうぞ。もっと大きくなるために。
おお、そうです。自分もサクのような巨乳キャラとして君臨するために。
She said something like that. She said something that would make a certain type of gentleman boo. Bigger didn't always mean better. So it was a needlessly complicated problem to women. Food came in no time. Rich scent tickled my nose. Wine, tomato, onions. Collaboration between just such standard ingredients and well-boiled meat. Every piece brought up the others.
おう、濃厚な味付けと舌の上で溶けて崩れる肉の煮込み具合。これはなかなか手間をかけた一品です。
そうでしょう。そうでしょう。さあ、どんと味わうが良いのです。
I liked this quite a lot, so much so that I would make this myself next time I had the chance. As I ate, I asked Miss Takazaki about what Master Narita has been up to. As his maid, I need to know whether he was doing something stupid. I was more or less 100% certain that he was.
昼間も少しお話ししましたが、スクールでの成田様はどのような感じですか？ご学友の方々に迷惑をかけておられないでしょうか？
めちゃくちゃ迷惑かけてます。ジョージです。
完膚なきまでに予想通りで、これっぽっちも驚きがありませんね。
Telling you not to trouble other people is like telling a bully from a movie to not become a good kid by the end.
迷惑をかけまくって悪びれずにセクハラしまくって、とにかくめちゃくちゃやってますが、サクもソラコもタマオも、それなりに慣れてはきたようですね。
成田様が慣れたのではなく、おとなし様たちが慣れてしまわれましたか。
豪雨と落雷で停電した時、外の天候に怒っても仕方ないですから。
天才扱いですか。
そんな感じです。雷を落とすのはサクの側ですけど。
Talking to Miss Takazaki was so fun that it made me forget the time. This might have been a first for me.
やはり似ている。どこか淡白で人間になりきれていない部分であるとか、自分の心をまだうまく表現できないところとか、そして問答無用で理屈も何も一切無視してとっくに生き方を決めていそうなところとか、かつての自分とも今の自分とも重なる部分があるから、だからこんなに楽しんでしまうのかもしれない。
ソラコに至っては生乳もみもみには勝てなかったよ。なのです。やっぱり金髪巨乳は淫乱と相場が決まっていますね。
おう、それはそれは。
While Takazaki shrugged with no expression on her face, I became aware of a certain problem. Soroko Katsuragi was the blood-related daughter of the second target, Shinzan Katsuragi. Master Narita knew her personally. He didn't talk much about her, but I could imagine that they were close. Should Master Narita really kill the second target? I suppose that it was pointless to ponder at this point. We would definitely go through with this. That thought made me realize just how much I became able to think. Well done, me.
成田様は頑固というか、わがままというか、なんと言いますか、ヒシアとしてはもう少し柔らかくなっていただきたいのですが、なかなかままならないものですね。
ほー。
My whispers made Miss Takazaki stop eating and open her eyes wide. This might have been the first expression I saw on
メ
her.
イドさんはなんだかんだと言って、成田のことを信頼してるのですね。
そうですね。長い付き合いですので。
へへ。でも、あの成田を信頼とか、マジ正気を疑います。
はい。自分でもマジそう思います。
I was completely serious about that.
食事の後、高崎様をバス停までお見送りしてお別れしました。今夜は思いがけず楽しいひとときを得ました。成田様もスクールでの生活で、それが束の間のものであれ、このようなささやかな幸福を享受できていればと、ヒシアは願います。約束された次の舞台の幕開けはもう間近。だからこそせめて成田様にひとときの安らぎがあらんことを。忠実なる次女は今日も夜鍋で働きますと言っても今は昼ですが、シンガポールに1件、アメリカに2件、金融関係の折衝を終えます。第2幕では葛を破滅させるため非合法かつ大掛かりに資金を運用しなければならないので大忙しです。
This is starting to feel more like Hishia behind the scenes than Hishia-Route.
成田様はあの通りの方ですから、折衝はヒシアがやってしまった方がおおむね手間がかかりません。どうしても厄介な事案では成田様が力を使われます。際どい商談も危険な裏取引も一撃必殺。ご主人様は目的のために手段を選びません。葛新山を追い詰める下準備はほぼ完璧に整いました。あとは成田様のゴーサインを待つばかり。そろそろ一休み入れましょうか。
Master Narita was around, I would give him coffee now. Bitter coffee was the man's choice, he would insist, and he had yet to understand the grand taste of black tea. How saddening. I was by myself, so it was obvious what I would make now. Now instead of black, I would go for Japanese-style tea. Specifically, the locally famous Fukushima coarse tea.
ジャパニーズティーの美味しい入れ方はまだまだ研究が足りてませんね。
Seated in a church hall, I drank Japanese tea from a mug. By my standards, this was quite a luxury. The bitterness of the hot tea stimulated my tongue and activated my brain. As I took a breather and relaxed, I remembered the night he completed his first act of revenge.
遠い銃声。約束の銃を握った成田様の手。それを見て胸に手をやる自分。なぜかこうして何度も思い出している。成田様が初めてヒシアの手を取られた時のことを思い出しました。それはヒシアの旅の始まり、もう何年も前のこと。
It was high noon. The intense heat and the lack of wind combined to make the destination shiver in a haze. It was a road surrounded by poor homes made of sun-dried bricks. The body of a man clad in gorgeous clothing began to collapse as he cautiously ran to support him. It was too slow, however. The man's body crashed against the white wall of a nearby house and left a trail of red on it as he collapsed on the floor. For now I knew there had been a light, dry sound of a gun firing. But I didn't realize it back then. I was extremely shocked. After all, I couldn't protect my owner. I asked myself why I had to protect him, but didn't find a single answer. All I knew was that my owner had been shot. Along with that came the realization that I couldn't fulfill my purpose anymore. There was a gun at my side. It had been bought, raised as a weapon, so the gun was like an extra limb to me. There was no need to think. The gun was already in my hand. The first bullet was already loaded. Safety was off. My owner was now showing the whites of his eyes and bleeding through his mouth as he became a corpse, but the attacker was still behind him. The orders given to me was to kill the enemy as I protect my master. Even if I didn't protect him, there was still the former. I had to kill the enemy. But then, for some reason, I glitched. What was my reason for doing this? I didn't know. Was it because there were poor people who emotionlessly watched the death of this flashy man? Was I broken by failing to fulfill my first directive? Or maybe there was no emotional reason for this, and the sunlight was too strong. Like me, my sisters didn't hesitate in acting to fulfill the orders given to them. I, however, let go of the weapon I held and looked at something that was shining next to my feet. It was something that hit the dry sand road, a bullet. It had pierced my now late master and scratched the wall a bit. The tip was slightly misshapen, but the overall shape hadn't changed. I used my sleeve to pick up the still hot bullet as well as the empty case nearby. I didn't really know why I did that. There was barely any blood on it. The smooth surface was pleasant for the eyes. Surroundings became loud, angry bellows, gunfire, and countless screams. None of it mattered to me. I was completely fixed on the bullet tip. How much time had passed? Suddenly there was a shadow over me. I looked up and saw a young man. His facial structure and skin made it clear that he was Asian. Lots of different blood was mixed among the people living here. Some among them had Asiatic features, so I could notice them well. What stood out about him was his harsh and cold eyes at the fact that he had an aged and rough handgun in hand. It wasn't rare for children to have guns here. Exposed to the blaze-like hostility, I reflexively moved. I once again took the gun I had let go and aimed it at him. He extended one of his hands toward me. It was one without a gun, or anything at all. I looked again and noticed that he had many scars on him. Some were old, some were fresh, some taken just moments ago. Gunfire was approaching us. The young man might have broken through my sisters. That might have been why he was so wounded. There was no way he could have survived. Not even the Reaper could escape from my sisters. Bleeding all over, the young man extended his hand towards me. I responded by overtaking this man. At the moment I did so, he began pulling me and running. There were loud bellows and gunfire behind me. Some bullets went right above or next to me. The boy was shooting back again and again and again.
走るぞ。
かしこまりました。
I ran as ordered. Might have been following him solely out of reflex due to the strong tone in his voice. Poor people around watched with confused eyes as a foreign boy and girl ran, leaving behind with bloody corpse. Gunfire, sparks, bellows, hot wind and sand. I heard the sister I was closest to shout something, but I didn't remember what. The young man ran and I merely followed. Our hands were still joined. He managed to lose them for the time being. Still wouldn't last though. My sisters would soon find us. They had to avenge their master after all. As I took a breather, the man looked right at me. I didn't have the mind necessary to wonder why. However, the very next moment... He fondled me, not holding back at all. It was an eagle grip, and he topped it off by burying his head between my breasts. He was a full, complete, ultimate pervert. If it wasn't but a weapon... would have shouted something like that. This young man was Master Narita in his youth, and this was before he went by Shinri Narita. By the way, I had quite an alluring body even back then. In all honesty, breasts were necessary for battle. They were heavy, got on the way, and made my back hurt, and increased the surface area I could be hurt on. However, my old master was a man of unique tastes. Just like there were those who liked the functional beauty of the AK series, as well as those who preferred the natural insect-like beauty of Blaza R92. He was a man who had preferences for me and my sisters. For him, women weren't meant to be enjoyed. Just like the freaks who were crazy about movies or bisque dolls, he found value in feminine beauty itself. Honestly, it was pretty messed up. Because of this, even though he made time to appreciate my aesthetic value, he had absolutely no experience. I had absolutely no experience being touched. My inexperienced breasts dominated like that made me let out a sound. As he buried his face in my breasts, the young man, Master Narita, was shaking. The softness he so desired must have moved him. After some time, he looked up and said that with the most serious face. This had to be the first time I ever thought, what is he even saying? Seemingly satisfied, the young Master Narita took my hand again and resumed running. After a few days of travel, we finally arrived at an abandoned building that seemed to be his hideout. The reason why it was easier to escape the chases than expected had to be the mess left behind by my master dying. With such a pillar of power gone, it was obvious that the second and third in command would fight over his position. History spoke of many such cases all over the world. Though it took us a while to... Though it took us a while to realize that we had a few chases. Back then, we did nothing but run for hours on end. Young Master Narita was clearly younger than me, but he acted extremely self-important in both ways of speaking and mannerisms. He was old enough for his voice to have already changed, which made him seem more adult than he appeared. Although that wasn't something I could care about. I went and did as told. I was used to obeying. As told, I doused myself in water, washing off a few days worth of sand and blood was so pleasant it surprised me. So that I washed myself as thoroughly as I could. This was something I learned later, but apparently washing your hands not only made them clean, but also helped wash off the doubts about the past and justify what you were doing right now. Once I was squeaky clean, he presented me a set of clothes.
着替えだ。身につけたまえ。
The way he's talking right now sounds very awkward almost. Another thing of note was that he didn't do something as modest as wait in another room. He'd been watching me wash myself, mostly focusing on my chest area.
かしこまりました。
As older, I took the clothes. I didn't have the capacity for embarrassment, so I couldn't care that someone was staring at me. The apparel provided to me were England-style maid clothes. It was quite a mystery how this boob lover acquired this in such an area, but I didn't even want to know the answer to that.
これは
メイド服というものだよ。
I knew that much. There were many servants wearing such clothes in my ex-master's
ど
mansion.
うしてメイド服なのですか？
I did as told until now, but the maid uniform forced a question out of me. I had nothing against wearing a servant's uniform, but we were being chased right now. It seemed like we had shaken them off by now, but it was unlikely that we would be taken by surprise from behind. But it wasn't unlike. It seemed that we had shaken them off by now, but it wasn't unlikely that we that we would be taken by surprise from behind. This uniform stood out far too much. That was the reasoning I gave.
ふむ。他人の言葉にいいダクダクと従うのみではなく、疑問を抱く意思はあるのか。それはいい。
Young Master Narita gave me an exaggerated nod.
何？ちょうどその服しか用意がなかっただけだとも。
That was his answer. Young Master Narita was the only person here. That meant that he either had it handy or kept it hidden somewhere. He had this maid uniform, female clothing. Skirts weren't exactly uncommon in this area. You could also see pants with lots of cloth, so it might have been for emergency use. Otherwise, it might have been a type of treasure, I guess. I could wear it without problem, but since he told me that it was good to ask questions, I gave him another
ど
one.
うしてメイド服を持っているのですか？
君はなかなかに有能なようだ。名前は？
ヒシア。
I said that out after thinking a bit. That was the name I'd been given before I'd been bought. I also had another one given to me by my now late master, but I didn't feel like using it. The memories of the place I was born in are weathered. I wasn't there for long, and what was left had been thoroughly shaved off by the days in the burning wasteland. The only thing that was left was the name that someone had used on me. I didn't know the meaning of Hishia. For all I knew, it might have just been a name given to me by my real parents.
ヒシアか。悪くない。
The young man ignored my question, folded his hand before nodding and beginning to talk in a grandiose manner.
ヒシという植物は俗名をトラパといい、これは地面に撒くことで外敵の侵入を阻むカルトロップスという武器を語源に持つ。花言葉は秘めた思い。続くあの字は己を意味する文字だが、元より名前とは己を指すものであるので、これはまあ音韻のために付け足された補助の一字というところだろう。つまりヒシア、君は何者かの守りの武器としての生活を送りつつ、胸の奥には、その豊かな胸の奥には何らかの熱い思いを秘めていたのだよ。
By the way, this was all said in English. This area saw the use of Hindu, Punjabi, Urdu, and other languages, but the official language was English. Despite that, upon merely hearing how my name was pronounced, he applied Japanese kanji to it, which was very Master Narita-like.
何？熱い思いなど思い当たらないというのかね。得てして本当に強い思いとは自身ではなかなか自覚できぬものだよ。だがそれを意識することができれば非常に強い力となって君を。
I meekly listened as he eloquently spoke for a good amount of time, but then I became annoyed and cut him off.
それでなぜ持ってるのですか？
私を育てた人間のクズから メイドというものは非常に素晴らしいと聞かされていた。いざという時のために衣装だけ入手しておいたのだよ。
So the only reason why Hishia has a maid now is because a scumbag of a teacher was like, Yo, this shit is fucking sick! Keep it!
いざという時って意味がわかりません。
今まさに役に立っただろ。
It was hard to agree with him, but I like the subtleties to say anything about it.
似合っているよ。
Sudden comment didn't make my heart skip a beat or anything like that. However, even now I could remember the honest childlike smile he gave me back then.
それが成田様に初めて会った時の思い出です。
As I enjoyed the Japanese tea, I found myself looking back at the past. A giggle escaped my mouth. For something that started in such a shocking manner, it certainly ended on a comical note. Also, though he'd strongly implied that the man who trained Master Narita was dead, he was actually alive. He was quite old when I got to meet him, but he was definitely enough of a character for even Master Narita to call him a scumbag. Made me understand why Master Narita grew up to be so problematic.
改めて自問しますと、石谷、どうして成田様に今も付き従っているのか、よくわかりませんね。
Master Narita freed me from the role of weapon, but he never once said that I had to obey and serve him. What I was doing right now was all based on my own will. With a clear and cool head, I could now easily see that Shinri Narita was far from a proper person.
尊大でわがままで空気が読めず、しばしば何を考えているかわからない行動をしでかし、異常なおっぱい狂。
He was a weirdo, to put it mildly. At the same time, there was a dark will boiling within him that no one was allowed to know about.
ますます危険人物ではないですか。
I was serving such an ultra madman. Most actions based on human will had some sort of reason to them. But the part of my heart where the reason should be was like an empty void. Perhaps that was the very reason why.
他の生き方が何一つ思いつかなかった。武器として育ち、主を失いましたが、結局新たな持ち主を選んだ。うつろな未来しか思い描けなかったので、未来へと続く時間軸の上に道を作るため、石谷は成田様に従った。それはもう何年も前、こことは違う熱風と砂塵の渦巻く土地でのことです。
成田真理はなすべきをなす。名を変え身分を偽り、スクールの一員に加わりながら学友たちを欺き、復讐という矜持を企てている。非道であり下道だ。成田真理がなすべき第一幕は終わった。次なるは第二幕。撃つべきは桂木新山。かつて帝家の金庫番でありながら黒船と語らって一族を皆殺した裏切り者。そして幼なじみでもある桂木空子の実の父親でもある。だからどうしたというのだ。人間なる者の情も 尊ぶべき諸々も捨て去った。
Below, I saw the grand and beautiful Katsuragi mansion. Shinzan had improved the defense of his castle and locked himself inside like a turtle in its shell. He was currently doing the final preparations for the second act's climax that would come tomorrow. The forest I was hiding in was on a hill near the mansion, so I could see its structure just by looking down. Reunited with Sorako after 7 years away, that wasn't a bond that could hold me. I would wield his hatred and take my enemy's life.
So...
Before I'd even begun this revenge tragedy, there was one moment where I let my rage and hatred take over. It was back when I was still inexperienced. I met her. Couldn't tolerate a certain man's plundering, so I took a gun in hand out of selfish anger. The result of that was...
成田様、どうかされましたか？いきなり黙ってしまわれて。ぶっちゃけ気持ちが悪くて背中ゾクゾクです。
Hishia's sound words from behind me brought me back to what had to be done.
屋敷を細部まで記憶していたのだよ。
My loyal and capable maid acquired the blueprints of the mansion and the records of a security system. This would be the last inspection we did before the act. All we had to do was account for any difference between the blueprint and the real thing, and then wait for the time to come.
今日はあくまでも下見。万一発見された場合、正体の露見を防ぐことを第一に、交戦を避けて迅速に撤退する。
はい。ヒシア、心得ています。
Though only someone extremely skilled could spot us while we were hiding, and I doubt that Shinzan had people like that. Shinzan Katsuragi, putting aside how he was as a person, you could tell that he had certain talents just by looking at his mansion. The building that mixed classical Japanese construction with modern architecture was designed by Shinzan himself. The garden was luxurious and vast. The walls on one side were built to outclass the view outside. The site was truly elegant. It was an example of the fact that personality and talent were separate things.
情報通り、かなりの防備を固めてますね。
いつもながら君の耳は確かだな。
Those with an attentive eye could see that there was strong bloodlust in the security. It wasn't mere alertness, but the thorniness of a man clinging to life.
その筋の方から丁重に聞き出したマル秘情報によると、ここ数日でいきなりだそうです。
He used the power of money to install as many security devices and hire as many guards as a hedgehog had spines. The place was now as brutish as a fortress, making it lose its elegance. Guards with low quality too. Must have been Yakuza and gang members who bought using his wealth and connections.
この程度問題にならない。せいぜいあがけ、新山。貴様の無様を復讐の祭壇へ捧げる花としよう。
桂木新山が守りを固めた理由、気にかかりますね。花園が姿を消したので、次は自分の番だと思ったとか。
そこまで察しのいい男ではなかった。
I also approached him using my identity as Shinji Narita to drag him out into this revenge tragedy. But it didn't look like he was wary of me at all.
不可解な点はあるが、こちらの動きが読まれたわけでないのなら、計画通りにことを進めるまでだ。
ヒシア的にあの屋敷から感じるのは怯えです。めっちゃ後ろ暗いことでもあるのでしょうか。
罪の意識だとでも。まさかだな。奴にそんな殊勝な干渉があるなら、とうに自らの心臓を切り裂いているだろう。財を築くために数えきれない数の人間を破滅させてきた。今になって怨恨の生産が降りかかるのを恐れているだけだ。もはやあの男に穏やかな夜はない。その最後にとびきりの悪夢で終止符を打とう。
So, if Even if he showed regret, I would still have my revenge. The sin had already been committed after all.
成田様、明日の段取りは？ヒシアは家でポテチでもかじりながらほげーっとしてれば OK でしょうか？
桂木新山が守りを固めるのであれば、城ごと滅ぼし、奴の希望を根こそぎにする。
では、成田様が突入する際の援護を。ちなみにヒシア、マウスを汚さないように、ポテチは割り箸でいただく主義です。
やはり君は行き届いているな。
Continued watching this mansion. At some point, Katsuragi and what seemed to be his wife appeared from the edge. They were watching the elegant garden with unrefined smiles, making it quite clear that they were talking about money. Someone who turned his mansion into a hedgehog, he was far too defenseless. Really taking his life was far too easy. Could end their lives with a single rifle right now. However, I wouldn't give them such a happy end. I would take all they had and make them know the gravity of their sins. That was how revenge was supposed to be done. To Shinrinari, only that could be a proper conclusion to the tragedy that had happened 7 years ago. If the second act turned out to be a failure, Kotuna would find out about my existence. That would be the beginning of a truly harsh battle. I had the resolve to throw away my life. All I cared could fall into the flames of revenge and burn along with everything else.
それでよい。が。
屋敷の周囲しか警戒してないようですし、もう少し近づいて調べてみますか？
The girl who'd served me like she always did had become a lot more human-like over the past few years.
彼女に何かをしてやれただろうか。
It was difficult to save anyone in the true sense, even if you dedicated your entire life to it. All that Shinri Narita did was set her free, and yet...
ヒシアは自ら同行することを誓った。
She did it despite having no reason for it, to come with me on this foolish journey with no happy ending. If this was her thanks for freeing her, it was certainly off the mark. Didn't even have the words to express how much her presence had saved me over the years. Hishia also had to resolve. She knew full well that the wasteland of vengeance couldn't be crossed by two people at once. She knew that she could become a bloody corpse at the side, and found it agreeable. But I didn't want such an ending. If I burned up, it would be the result of walking the path I'd chosen for myself. If the Lord above gave me retribution for this, I would welcome it. However, Hishia was...
成田様。
Cut my thoughts short and came back to my senses.
何やら上の空で、マジ体調でも悪いのですか？さては今朝、おとなし様のを揉み損ねて、深刻なオッパイン B1 不足なのですか？
変質者扱いはやめたまえ。進行に時と場所は選ばないが、放満がなくても3日は持つのだよ。
完璧に間違いなく、それは変質者です。
His loyal maid gave me a judging glare. I focused on the mansion again.
確かに、もう少し距離を詰めても。
Suddenly felt something akin to bloodlust out my neck. There was a shock going through my body as though I took a bad to sand. This feeling told me that something bad would happen if we came closer. It only took a moment to decide whether we should really continue or back down.
ここまでで十分だ。
まあ確かに、あの屋敷を落とすだけなら、ここから見ているだけで十分ですね。
Hishia shrugged with her usual somewhat bored
一旦
expression.
戻るとしよう。決着は明日だ。
はい、成田様。
Strange phenomenon might have been just an illusion. The real reason why I decided to be cautious was most likely because I prioritized Hishia. There was no need to start a fire here at this moment. We left the place from which we could overlook the Katsuragi mansion and walked through the untamed forest to a side road. We tried to be as careful as possible, but thankfully it wasn't necessary. I would sneak out of the academy, come back here tomorrow night, and settle the score with Shinzan Katsuragi. Everything was going according to plan. Likely to my increased alertness, I noticed that Hishia was sometimes touching the area below her neck, probably subconsciously. I knew well what was below the maid clothing. The two bountiful breasts were given, but there was also the bullet from that time. When I'd first met Hishia, I'd let my anger take over and fired that exact bullet at the man who owned her as a weapon. When I grabbed her hand and began running, for some reason Hishia had picked up the bullet and the casing. She put the two together and now wore them as a necklace or charm.
まだそれを持っているのかね。
ああ、はい。石や、いつも肌身離さず身につけております。
She responded with a faint smile. Very.
弦を担げる類の由来でもないだろうに。
まったく。なんという無粋なことを。少女漫画の主人公並みにロマンチストのくせに、他人の乙女ハートを理解しやがらないご主人様です。
Hold on, she said something about shoujo, not shonen.
まったく。なんという無粋なことを。少女漫画の主人公並みにロマンチストのくせに、他人の乙女ハートを理解しやがらないご主人様です。
There I have to... I feel like translating shoujo protagonist as shonen manga protagonist is a bit too wrong. How do you make that mistake? Or did they like change the meaning of the sentence slightly to fit better? Who knows?
いや、しかし。
これについては、成田様はどうぞ気になさらないでください。
私にとって唯一無二な次女のことだ。気にしないというわけにもいかないだろう。
ほう。では、コレクターズアイテムということに。
成田心理コレクショングッズかね。それは悪くない趣味だが。
いえ、イシアの歴史シリーズグッズです。
微妙に釈然としないものがあるが、まあいいだろ
う。しかしまあ、どうしても売っちゃってしまえというのが成田様のご命令であるなら、忠実な次女としては、おとなしく従うのもやぶさかではありません。
それはないが。
She often told me that I was stubborn and obstinate, but in my mind she had me beat in that regard. This was something she herself wanted. If this was something she herself wanted, I had no right to bend it, though I had one thing to say.
以前にも言って聞かせたが。
はい。なんでございましょう。
I stopped and turned to look at her, and she responded by looking right back. Stood in the shadows of the roadside trees, bearing different emotions in our eyes. My eyes likely showed a glimpse of an old, bitter memory, while hers showed nothing but peace.
シア、君は私に借りなどない。そのことは忘れないでくれ。
いえいえ、そこら辺も含めて手前のことですから。主人の手を煩わせることなく、イシア、勝手にいたします。
She avoided arguing with me, leaving me no choice but to give up. This was how it always went whenever we talked about memories. However, even if she didn't have any regrets, I did, which was a rarity for me. It was something that I couldn't change now that it had been done.
君は本当に強情だな。
成田様に言えたことではありませんね。
I gave up and sighed, while she merely smiled. She then came close and passed me, making us stand back to back, likely lying on one another. I was the type to become alert when someone came from behind me, but Hishia was a special case. It was a weekday noon, and we were standing here like this next to a mountain road that barely had cars pass. Anyone looking at us would find us strange. I could feel her warmth on my back, which was the same as it ever was. However, Shinri-Narita was no longer just a boy who was burning with a rage at an unfair world.
君は自分で思っているよりも多くのものを私に与えてくれた。
Silence continued for a good while, and our backs exchanged a lot of words. I Next thing I knew.
何もかも終わった後はどうするつもりかね。
I asked her
お
that.
仕事終了後ですか？そうですね。
It wasn't likely that I would be in a good state once it was all over. Even if I survived, I probably wouldn't be blessed with a good future. Once that day came, I wanted her to forget this man and focus on her own bliss and live free. She put her hands on her chin and tilted her head in thought before answering.
わがまま勝手で世間知らずの主人を捨ておくとのたれ死にでもしそうなので、イシアが最後まで面倒を見ることにしましょう。
She was stubborn indeed. Hishia was obviously aware of what I was implying. She acted like she was trying to think of an answer, but that was merely an act. She knew the answer right away. There were paths with more bliss she could take. That was also part of me that was relieved to hear that. It was as though a spark had appeared in the empty post-revenge future I couldn't even picture. I knew full well how sinful it was for me to think that.
君は完璧なメイドだな。
It was the path she'd chosen herself, so what could I say against it? No matter how foolish it seemed to others, you could only find a life of no regrets on the path you chose for yourself. That was exactly what Shinri Narita had to do what he had to do. I would have my revenge.
もちろんでございます。
Still back to back, we exchanged a faint smile. Then we resumed walking as though nothing happened. Tomorrow was the day I would have our revenge against Katsuragi. We had to return and thoroughly do the final preparations. After all, there would be no peace in this heart, burning with rage until the 4 targets were dead.
成田様を車で市内まで送り、バスに乗り込まれるのを見送った後、港へ出て取引を一つ済ませてしまいます。正規の空輸でも船荷でもありません。思ったよりもスクールが手強そうなので、急遽手配していた品のいくつかがようやく届きました。サイズの違う木箱を3つ。中身はおがくずとサバの缶詰。二重底の中身については、乙女の秘密。軽く品質チェック。クーリングオフは効かない品が多いですので、お支払いはお口ファスナー込みで相場よりお高めに。こちらは戸様、乗客として振る舞うのが大事です。イシアもたまに見るノワールな映画では、決まって人気のない深夜の取引が行われますが、意外と白昼堂々荷物を移す方が発覚しないものであったりなかったり、滞りなく受け取ったので、アジトへ戻りました。
Okay, what the fuck was the feminine scent about?
After I brought the items to the church and did the necessary adjustments, time of day was actually rather awkward. It was too early for dinner, so I thought of having some late lunch and me and wandering the city to refresh myself in preparation for tomorrow. According to what my good-for-nothing master said, he was the only male étoile in the academy, making him get the VIP treatment. Apparently he was eating like a king every day, so I had to eat lots of good food to keep up with him. Though it wouldn't be a competition or anything, I just felt like it. Though I'd already checked all the places that Miss Takazaki had recommended to me as a local.
となると、ここは己で新規開拓するほかないでしょう。ないですね。はい。店を探すところもまた、食事の楽しみの一部分ですし。
Speaking of myself, I casually walked to the Furumachi River flowing not far from the Fukushima station. The riverside here had a park an outdoor stage and a boardwalk, making it feel quite grandiose. The eastern side had many establishments lined up, and I explored some of them. One was Italian, one was an Okushima ramen place. I looked left and right and compared the menus and appearances of the various places here. I'd heard of a popular comic that had become a TV series. It was about an average man eating by himself in an average restaurant establishment. Naturally, it was Miss Takazaki who told me about it. We talk quite a lot when eating together. As I wandered around while thinking such a thing, I ran into a familiar face. Of course, it wasn't Miss Takazaki. This was blonde, and this one was blonde and had pretty blue eyes. Besides that, she had larger breasts that Miss Narita would love, that Master Narita would love, and yet wore men's clothing, which made her quite strange. Her name was Sorako
と言っ
Katsuragi.
ても実際に目にするのは初めてですが、
Due to her being a key person, I'd seen a photo of her. She was the daughter of the next target, Shinzan Katsuragi. Besides that, she was also Master Narita's childhood friend, an acquaintance from before the time he
こ
burned
う
the
してみ
painting.
るといかにも成田様の好みに合致しそうな方ですね。
Based on his usual behavior, most would assume that he only cared if the boobs were big, but that wasn't the case. Master Narita liked boobs, but he wasn't a lustful man. He also made a point of to be approachable, was highly unabashed, and had an airheaded side to him, so there were many women who were attracted to him. He normally acted like he didn't care about them at all, only to go on and be by their side when they wanted it, or present them with his open, straightforward self. Basically, it was amazing. Despite being a pervert, he didn't know his place. Would it be weird to believe that he had some sort of weird superpower that made him release pheromones? He also had a preference for women with a strong heart. Breast size was of high importance too, and blonde hair also added a good amount of points.
ご主人様の思考はあの方の影響もあるのかもしれませんね。
Japanese folk wisdoms did say something about a blonde dragon living to 100. Though it wasn't likely, as Miss Katsuragi, a little lady Sorako, had large breasts back then, so he must have developed his love for breasts from something else.
さて、どうしたものか。
But that wasn't even a question. Miss Sorako didn't even know my face, so it was best to act like I didn't know her and just pass by her. But that didn't go well.
大丈夫ですから。
固いこと言うなよ、姉ちゃん。
いいだろう。お茶ぐらいしようぜ。
She was approached by two boorish-looking men. They were a breed of people you wouldn't expect to see in a rural town like Fukushima. They were perhaps the type of baddies who piled up shame while traveling. The men were acting friendly and trying to lead her to an empty back alley. This wasn't looking good. She was the daughter of my master's target. Knowing what would be happening soon, it was wise to approach her an increased amount of uncertain
な
factors.
どとできた次女は悩んだりいたしません。
The Narita household had a rule to help maidens in need. By following it, he had attracted a lot of trouble and breasts to fondle. It's truly the worst. The most notable recent event involved the daughter of a prince of the British Empire, but I would leave that aside for now.
そこの学生様、私は通りすがりのメイドさんですが。
Knowing that it would be dishonorable of a maid of the Narita household to abandon her, I dashed to the back alley they vanished into.
たく、まったくお話にならないよ、お前たち。
Lady Soroko threw back her blonde hair in a flashy manner. She had glasses on, and there were two people lying next to her feet.
これは全く予想外の展開。
ナンパすんならせめてもう少しは頑張れよ。暇つぶしにもなりゃしね。
Miss Soroko sighed and shrugged at the men she downed in just a few seconds and then turned to leave. That led to us facing one another. Seeing me made her make a strange face. I hadn't met her, so it was unlikely that she could know that I was Master Narita's maid. But that was something I already that was something already known to lecturer Yumisa as well as Miss Otanashi, so it wouldn't be a big issue. The problem was that she was an A12 tier HMI, and thus could have abnormal eyes.
あとは任せた。
I'd become worried that something bad could happen, but then she put her glasses away as though she had lost interest. Perhaps it was better to just turn back. My attentiveness sometimes worked as a curse. This time it made me realize that Miss Oroko didn't look so well. After she removed her glasses, she became pale and began walking in an unsteady manner. I had no choice here. Following the data in my brain, I accompanied Miss Oroko to a bench on a nearby park.
私は通りすがりのメイドさんです。何やら体調が悪そうですが。
はい。ちょっと気分が悪くなっちゃって。ありがとうございます。
Nearly speaking made her out of breath.
無理はいけませんよ。少し休みましょう。
どうもありがとうございます。
Soroko lightly bowed her head and thanked me over and over. I chose to stay with her until she calmed down and sat next to her.
そうですか。菱谷さんは本物のメイドさんなんですね。スクールの外でメイドさんを見るなんて思いませんでした。
絶滅危惧種メイド目、英国メイド赤に属するメイドです。確かに珍しいですが、意外と大きな石をどけたりすると見つかるものですよ。
We introduced ourselves, but I'd made sure to hide the fact that I was Master Narito's
なん
maid.
だか珍しい虫みたいですね。
スクールというのは、桂木様が通学なされている学園ですか？メイドがいるとは一風変わっておられますね。
様なんてよしてください。助けてもらったのは僕だし。
では、ザ・スラッピエンコマンさんとでも呼びましょうか。
様でいいです。
I used my wit to shorten the distance between us and perhaps make her feel at least a bit better. If the body wasn't well, Master Narita would always emphasize the health of the mind.
というわけで、本当にご主人様はとんでもない変態なので、年がら年中おっぱいのことを考えているのです。
その人、僕が知ってる人になんだかすごく似てる気がします。
Many would realize that they were one and the same, but you seem to be quite the natural airhead. This quality was charming on beautiful girls, but very vexing on filthy men, which was a good example of how unpleasant society could be. Miss Sorako was quite unlike the girl she was when she instantly downed 2 men at the back alley. She had these distant cold eyes, but now she was more like spring sunshine, which I found quite odd.
空子様の学園にもおられるのですか？メイドあるところ、演出者ありですね。
うん、そうなのかも。
She was honest and soft and didn't seem to harbor any ill will. However, tomorrow, Master Narita would take her father away from her forever. Based on preliminary investigations, Miss Soroko and her father Shinzen were on complicated terms. It was hard to call them a proper father and daughter. There was a chance that they felt for each other more than what you'd expect from parent and child. What? That was a poor excuse. The ones who were trampling over the present for the sake of the past were Master Narita and me. I wouldn't hesitate to bring down the paddle at the blade or pull the trigger, but perhaps I did feel a bit of guilt. Perhaps that was the reason why I'd called to her, despite being fully aware that it was unnecessary. Even now, the mind and heart were things I found difficult to control.
顔色はいくらか良くなられたようですね。
ありがとうございます。僕、人混みに弱くて、街に出ると気分が悪くなってしまうことが多いんです。
それなのに、どうしてこんなところへ？
It's quite bold to call anything you had here in rural Fukushima a crowd. If that was enough to make her feel unwell, she must have been really weak.
お友達の男の子に励まされて、なんとか慣れていけるように頑張ろうと思ったんです。
お友達の男の子ですか？桂木様は努力家なのですね。
She rubbed the chest area and took deep breaths. When she was done with that, it was as though she never felt bad to begin with. A moment later, she put on her glasses again.
私からもお礼をもう一度言わせてもらうよ。手を貸してくれてありがとう。
お気遣いなく。困った時はお互い様とこの国では言うと聞いております。
Was the putting on the glasses gave her a completely different aura, and I didn't quite understand what kind of phenomenon this was. Just like Miss Master Narita, Miss Soroko had a special power called a halo, so there were certainly things in this world that a mere maid couldn't understand. So, also, it wasn't good to get too involved with the thought of an enemy.
これからどちらへ？
She answered after taking off her glasses.
もう少し街を散策してからスクールに戻るつもりです。今日はありがとうございました、メイドさん。
では、イシアはそろそろおいとまして、最高おいしい食事どころを探すセンチメンタルジャーニーに戻ります。桂木様、お気をつけて。
はい、メイドさんもお気をつけて。
She realized that I was about to stand up and leave and said her goodbyes. She was as nice as Master Narita had told me.
空子様と偶然にお会いした翌日の深夜。正確に述べると、日付はさらに一つ変わっていました。成田様と共に、桂木屋敷を再び眼下に臨みます。
肥えた土ほど草深いという、あまたの血と恨みを吸って育った呪われた木よ。おののけ、今宵お前の埋葬した怒りと憎悪がふさわしい結末をもたらすのだ。このあまりに無慈悲な復讐劇。
はい、成田様。結局、空子様とお会いしたことは、我が主にはお伝えしませんで。
燃える屋敷、崩れ落ちる過去。また一つ、憎悪の生産が終わる。第2幕が終わった。残る舞台はあと2つ。
Everything was going as planned. A few days had passed since the second act ended. However, there was suddenly something unexpected happening. At night, Sakutanashi and I were avoiding the academy security as I snuck outside.
お久しぶりです、おとなし様。
It's starting to feel like this is all... It really is starting to feel like this isn't Hishia's route, but like... what Hishia was doing during the events of Saku's route. Hishia, who I thought here ahead of time, greeted us with a bow.
学園の外に抜け出して何をするのかと思えば。
Saku was the insignia of the crown. She protected the academy's peace and order, while Shinri Narita was an avenger who deposed it. Normally, us cooperating would be as likely as the Burnham Forest, just uprooting and moving. Hold on, wasn't that Macbeth? Was that a fucking Macbeth reference? I'm pretty sure that was a fucking Macbeth reference. Yep, that was a Macbeth reference! Motherfucker! That's the one I read, bitch! Basically, for the uninitiated, one of the reasons why Macbeth went insane, basically, was a prophecy that he received from 3 hags. And they included that he would be struck down by... I don't remember who it was. I don't remember who it was that struck down, strike down Macbeth. Hold on, let me just look it up. Duncan's son. No, Macduff was. I had the Duncan's son on Macduff. I don't fucking care. But yeah, it was basically like he would only he would only lose once Burnham Forest came to Dunnison Hill or whatever it's fucking called, and that he would die by the hands of Duncan's son. Or something of that, in that direction. Fucking excuse me? It's been like 3 years at this point. It's been fucking 3 years at this point. Almost 4 now. It's been almost 4 years. Because I read that in my last year. That I was still at school, my last half year, but more like. But yeah, that's actually like probably like 4 years ago already, almost. 5. One of the crowns, Mitri Kaputiyama, had vanished from the academy some time ago. Officially, she had urgent business back at home. So urgent, in fact, that she couldn't even leave any goodbye messages. Sakutanashi couldn't accept that. It wasn't that she rejected the reality of her friend just disappearing like that. She just couldn't accept it because she knew Mitri well enough to know that she would never do this. Maybe it could have been a flaw. Maybe it could have been a flaw in her perception of her. Or perhaps they weren't as close as she believed. Sakutanashi rejected those ideas. She believed that she saw what she saw herself in the days she'd spent with Mitri, and chose to find out the truth. Basically, she was going against the Academy's official message. Every effect had an equal and opposite effect, and Sakutanashi's actions quickly led to a response, taking the shape of an accident at school, which happened just a couple hours ago. It seemed quite clear that there was someone behind it. It was best to assume that it was a warning against Sakutanashi and was coming too close to the Academy's secrets. Some things didn't add up, but I thought it reasonable to assume that it was the truth. If I hadn't been there by chance, the accident could have brought about a horrible situation. That event united the Avenger and the Academy's shining star in the cause of exposing the truth. That was why Sokka was here. Almost dying had left her shocked. But I let her rest in my room before leading her outside the academy.
改めて紹介しよう。菱谷森。私に仕える優秀な侍女だ。
マジ久しぶりでございます。石谷、ご主人の顔は見飽きておりますが、おとなし様とこんな形で再会できるとは思っておりませんでした。
For tonight, I would introduce them and ask Hishia to investigate something. Since it wasn't easy for us to leave the academy and operate outside for long, I had to rely on my loyal maid for this.
では、今夜のところは一足先に、石谷、お帰りいたします。
菱谷も十分に気をつけるよ。
It was more or less the time that Kurofune and his goons would become aware of the existence of the Avenger. The remaining two wouldn't be easy enemies, and the difficulty would be on another level.
ご心配なく、すべては台本通りに。むしろ、ご主人様のボケボケぶりが、医師や多分に心配です。せいぜいお気をつけを。
Understanding what you meant, I nodded. My capable maid turned around without even waiting for my words and took the van back to town.
成田は何の目的でここに来たの？
Sakura asked me that as though she was waiting for Hishia to leave. There was an air of interrogation.
私はエトワール。クラウンの筆頭。この学園を守る者。この学園を正すために真実を突き止めてみせる。音無作はスクールを愛しているから。
Her eyes fixed right on me were so void of hesitation that it was dazzling.
では、成田真理。あなたの目的は何？それが学園に災いをもたらすなら、きっと私は捨てておけない。
私も、かつて犯された過ちを正すために来た。それが、この学園に加わった理由だ。これが、今話せる最大限だ。
Sakura gave me a challenging glare, which I tried to avoid. She averted her gaze only when the flowing clouds hit the moon above. Sakura was beautiful, not just appearance but also nature. She had the shining will needed to face trouble and pain and fear. That was why she needed Narita couldn't go any further than this. In the shadow of the night clouds, I saw a glimpse of an impossible dream. It wasn't an avenger, but a person. That perhaps I could have fallen for this beautiful girl. Okay, so it does slightly shift, I guess. I returned to the academy as fast as I could. It's gonna like largely follow Sakura's route, but gonna like diverge into another path at some point. Carrying Sakura like a princess, I used Chipkali steps to pass the academy walls and returned to the door without anyone realizing we were gone. It was very late at night and most people were peacefully sleeping now. The lights in the dome had completely vanished. Since I was holding her, Sakura's face was close, and it felt like she was pondering something. Knowing her position as the insignia and her will to defy the academy, it was only natural to be conflicted.
見てみたまえ。星空も国に似るものなのかな。この国の星空はどこか穏やかな柔らかさがある。
成田はずっと海外暮らしだったんだっけ？南半球？あっちの空の方が綺麗だとか聞くけれど。
様々な星空を見上げたが、私にはこの夜空が一番好もしいようだ。懐かしさのせいかもしれないが。
I'll be right back.
あなたも生まれは日本なのよね。故郷の空か。でも突然、どうしてそんな話を？
空は世界のどこからでも見上げられる。様々な顔を見せてくれる。その雄大さ、複雑さに比べれば、人の一生などちっぽけなものではないかね。
それって？
あまり思い悩みすぎるなということだ。思慮深さは褒められるべきものだが、時には頭よりも心が世界を動かすことがある。
もしかして成田、私のこと励ましてくれてる？
そんなおこがましいことはしないとも。あえて言うなら、うつむいている君よりも前を向いている君の方が好みだというところだよ。
あなたって本当に変人。
She finally smiled again. I was really glad that I was able to save her. I was an avenger, but it appeared that it still had a human side to me. After all, I had the heart to love what was beautiful.
本当に策の素晴らしい放漫を救えてよかった。あの神の父が失われるのは世界の損失だ。
口に出して言うな、この変態。
I spoke my honest thoughts, which caused her to snap in spite of it being late night.
もうここまで来たら一人で行けるから降ろして。いつまでも抱いてないでやらしい。
まるで私を生来の変質者のように。心外だ。
だってそうだし。
I didn't quite agree with that, but I wouldn't argue tonight. Put her down on the ground as if I just brought her out of her carriage, returning from a ball. That was what I was about to do, but first I lightly shook her and oh très bien! They shook so beautifully. Mankind feast your eyes upon this, they jiggle with the slightest movement.
どうして降ろしてくれないの？
あとしばらく君のビビしく神々しい豊満を堪能してからで。
Saku let out a long sigh and
今すぐ死んじゃえこの変態！
apparently it wasn't agreeable.
わあ人いとねんたらた。
Left alone in my room, I tried stabilizing my mind and body using the breathing of Geb, but I was actually having trouble focusing.
精度は6分というところか。
Everything that Shinji Narita was supposed to accomplish was going smoothly so far. The second act was done and we were moving towards the climax. The one thing bothering me was as the time was drawing closer, was boobs! So yeah, this base. This feels like it's supposed to be like the, I guess, point where it splits, I guess. It's the best way to put it. Like if you say Hishia, it's down for Tahishia's route, of course. But if you say like boobs or Saku, it's Saku's route all the fucking way. So we're just gonna go ahead and boop. By that I meant Hishia. Well, her breasts, however, she was beautifully bountiful as well, but that wasn't what I had to address this time. Hishia, as she was tonight, appeared to be the same as ever, but I could tell that something was different. Perhaps she was worrying about something.
随分と変わったものだ。
Our first meeting felt like a very distant past now. It was a time when I was still inexperienced and had no power. Back then, there was an enemy I'd killed by the drive of my own hatred. The cause was a single girl.
よく覚えている。
Put my hand on my left shoulder as though to pull the past to me. The work of art made and refined as a gun. A work of art made and refined as a gun. She was more precise than a machine, sharper than a blade, and faster than a bullet. However, when I saw her from up close, she seemed profoundly sad. True machines didn't feel sadness. Mere blades would be complete by just being wielded. And bullets didn't think about anything besides going forward. In her eyes, however, I saw something that didn't fit those templates. That's what I wanted to save her despite not knowing how weak I was, or the true meaning of battle.
悔いているわけではないのだよ。
All that had happened there was inevitabilities, part of the process to make Shinri Narita complete. The reason why I didn't break before the cruelty of the world was Hishia's presence. She taught me that every action could produce results. Her presence told me that there were things I could gain. I was giving her an obscene amount of trouble. Without her, the path walked by Shinri Narita would have been far more difficult. Hishia always supported me through thick and thin, and in a way, it seemed like fondness on her part.
受け入れられるわけがない。だからせめて。
Hishia's squint and faint smile had grazed my heart so much that it gave me a strange pain. I was giving out a silent prayer. Selfish as it was, it came out very clear.
どうか君の歩む先に幸多からんことを。
I went out to the living room for a change of pace. Couldn't control myself well, and I knew well that at times like this it was best to renew yourself. Reached out to turn on the lights only to realize that it was already on.
ふむ、L か。こんな遅くまで夜更かしかね。
こっちのセリフです。てめえこそ何をしているのですか？
Ada was already in the living room. The bean lover here might have suddenly felt like drinking a cup of coffee.
私は気分転換だが、君はもしかするとコーヒーをむさぼり食うために来たのだろうか。
コーヒーは飲むものですが、まあ、それも悪くないですね。
ということは、そうではないと。
She's pulling a... she's pulling a Hiroshi. As we know, Hiroshi always has a bunch of coffee beans with him to just munch on.
ミトリがいなくなって、ザクがへこんで、空子もしばらくお休みなので、なんだか、前より静かな量が落ち着かなくて。
Indeed, when Soroko learned about her parents' death, she actually collapsed due to shock and was now recovering in a hospital here in the academy. There was something even more shocking. There was something even more shocking in what Ada just said, though. I slowly blinked to let myself process it. Apparently, Ada was feeling lonely. A girl who so readily spoke her emotion was now feeling lonely. The Ada I knew would have never said something like that. She was now so friendly that she actually showed how she felt. She'd gone through something that made her shed some of that thick skin. Regardless, maiden spreading her wings was a cause for celebration. Thus speak the words that gave due respect to her soul.
なるほど。君も寂しいと思うことがあるのだね。こういう時、ママのおっぱいでも吸ってろという定型句があるそうだが、代わりに私の乳首などどうだろう。
Right, I still need to fix this. I did the front of my clothing and lied down on the sofa in a slovenly way. Ada stared at me with eyes like that of a fish. But then...
Oh!
What the fuck? She did it. She sucked on my nipple with a passion as hot as magma at the intensity of violence. Making me let out a sound. What the fuck is happening?
キモい。男というクソ生き物はどうして女子の乳を揉んだり吸ったりするのが人生そのものみたいな顔をするのですか？
こう育み愛を築く。女の胸は男には永遠に届かない神秘だ。
Considering you say that, you've touched quite a few of those already.
しかし自分で提案しておいてなんだが、二度とするまいと私は誓ったよ。
I looked away from her like a married lady who was being forcefully approached by her boss and fixed her clothes. Fixed my
死ぬほど
clothes.
キモいので今後二度と絶対マジやめてください。
Like, Nadia's just like still lying on the couch like... I know I suggested this, but I feel violated. It would look like me like I was trash and then began preparing coffee. Not the instant kind, but the one that started with grinding beans.
豆を愛しているのだね。
そう。金時豆はラブですが、コーヒーも豆なので、紅茶よりも価値があります。
ふむ。どうして君はそれほど豆好きなのか。
聞きたいですか？聞きたいですね。では、教えま。おっと、準備ができたので、解説はまたの機会に。
The fact that she left me hanging like this only made me more curious. What if this kept me awake at night? Although Ada rarely prepared coffee herself, her skill was matched by few. Thankfully, she was making some for me as well. I would use the smell of caffeine to stabilize my heart.
ふと目が覚めて出てきてみたら、深夜のお茶会でもしているのかい？
Hello there, madman.
大義。
I knew they began warming up the cups. Tiger appeared and walked down the steps. This man, Tiger Mikado, had joined us in the storm as a new étoile, as though replacing Midori. Needless to say, he was the son of Kurofune Mikado, and thus the fact that he joined the dorm meant that he had some sort of goal here. Or perhaps he was just transferred here to stabilize the crowds and make sure that Midori's absence didn't make them break.
もう一つ。
Not even asking him anything, Ito began warming up another cup.
成田も眠れないのかい？
おおむねそのようなところだ。
The exchange was short, but there was a strange sense of solidarity in it. It was odd, because he might have been an enemy to me. Was this what it meant to share a dorm with someone? It made me feel a kind of peace I hadn't felt in 7 years.
As well as a bliss that didn't seem to belong.
Annoyance. I knew they finished warming up the cups and set the filters. 2 doors opened up on the 2nd floor, and out came Saku and Tamao.
みんなこんな時間に。
Saku's hair was messy, making me guess that she might have slept a bit after coming back from the outside.
おいおい、勢ぞろいして何やってんだよ。
Tamao had been born with sharp senses, so she probably awoke when she heard us make noise here.
さらに2つ追加？
Tamao scratched her head and energetically went down the stairs before turning back at Saku, who looked a bit sleepy. It was late at night, and being awake at this time was against his academy rules. Normally Saku would say something like,
もう何時だと思ってるの？エルマと一緒になって。
that, make us all return to our rooms, but she didn't say anything and just went down the stairs.
私にもちょうだい。
サク公認だな。
生真面目な筆頭殿にも息抜きが必要ということだね。
After taking out our cups for Saku and Tamao too, Eru finished making coffee for everyone and sat down next to Saku. The smell of coffee filled the dimly lit room.
ソラコ、いつ戻ってこられるのかな？
沖野先生もわからないと言ってました。
HMI ってのは繊細らしいからな。
すぐに戻れるよ。実家で不幸があったから、それが落ち着くまで1週間か2週間ぐらいじゃないかな。
The Etoiles had been exposed to many strange things recently. No one could say anything cheerful. The more we talked, the heavier the air here became. The sofa that everyone sat on without any planning now had 2 free spaces. The the places where Mitri and Sorako once sat.
なるようになるだろう。
Tomo tried to act cheerful, but she was obviously fatigued. Though she and Mitri weren't much alike, they still clicked rather well in certain ways. She held back her bashfulness and tried to act normal. This was her way of being considerate of her fellow duel mates.
悲しいことがこの世から消えることはないけれど、終わったことにとらわれていては前に進めない。
Taigi whispered those words.
そうね。今すぐはそんなポジティブになれないけど、でもしっかりしなきゃね。
成田はどう思う？
Taigi wasn't talking to Saku. His gaze was on me since the start. It was unlikely that he knew the true identity of Shinri Narita.
もっともだな、大義。我々が迎えるのは過去ではなく未来のみだ。
Like Narita saying this is Taigi's just like, hypocrite? What? Nothing? Need, there was nothing to gain from revenge. Need, it was best to look at the future instead of the past. There was no lie in there. Despite that, Shinri Narita would rebel against this justice. It was too late for me to change the path I walked.
過去に絡め取られた者はやがて失意の中で過去に裏切られて殺される。成田はそうならないことを祈っているよ。
それがお前の予言なら、残念ながら今回は当たらないな。人生とは己という神を掘り上げるための巡礼だ。
探すんじゃなくて？
探して見つかるものではないだろう。旅路の終わりに完成を見る。人間の価値は終わった後でどう語られるかだ。その過程のすべては真。偽りの入り込む余地はない。裏切るものがあるとすれば、過去ではなく己自身だ。己の魂を裏切った時、人は死ぬ。
Taigi nodded and looked away.
成田ってごく稀にまともなこと言うから困るわ。
まともじゃなくてまともっぽいです。普段は領内徘徊する魔人父同行のくせに哲学ぶったらおつもよく見えると思うな。ったく眠くなる話しやがって。
The exchange continued on. When Saku placed down her empty cup, he had to ask if she wanted another.
もう一杯飲みますか、サク。
ありがとう。
Saku gave way to a smile, then put her hands on her knees and made a cheerful voice.
さあ、暗いのは今夜のうちにやりきって、明日からまた頑張りましょう。空子が療養中の分、クラウンの仕事は増えるんだから。
ああ、またしんどくなるな。
玉尾、そんなこと言わないの。みんなで頑張りましょう。エルも大義も成田も。
A cup of coffee had blown away Saku's gloom. She gave them encouraging words, not saying anything that would make them think she was challenging the academy. It was so that she wouldn't involve them. She also gave me a glance that carried a lot of meaning. Bravery made me want to say something back, but I held back. Sodoko's state was Shinri Narita's doing. The shadows cast over this duel was yours truly. I didn't have any words I could say in response to her cheer.
そういえばこの前、成田のところのメイドさんに会いましたよ。
So to help, Saku had presented a new topic. It was strange that this emotionally lacking girl would bring life to her conversation.
ヒシアさんのこと？
そうです。ヒッシーです。
メイドはいいね。成田のお付きのメイドとは一度顔を合わせたことがあるよ。まだ奥島に滞在しているとは知らなかった。
成田のメイドね。俺会ったことねえし。
しかし メイドに最も必要なのは平坦さだと僕は思う。噂の彼女はどうなのかな。悲しいことになっていなければいいのだけれど。
大義、その発言は太陽が地球の周りを回っていると言い出すのにも等しい。世界の真実に対する挑戦だ。私は断固として許せない。
This was the moment when the girls just decided, we're just gonna leave.
同感だね。君の美というものについての看過しがたい冒涜はいずれ何としても改めさせねばならないと僕は感じているんだよ。
どっちも頭おかしいのはよくわかったから、おとなしくコーヒーを楽しんでなさい。
ふむ。ところで彼女は相変わらずたくましくやっていたかね。
Met Hishia regularly, but I had to play along here.
はい。成田の愚痴を言ってました。
あれは愚痴ではなく、彼女なりの主に対する親愛と忠誠の表現なのだよ。
ふへへ、どうだか。成田みたいな変人に付き合うメイドさんも大変ですね。
Hishia and Edu had somewhat similar auras. She enjoyed talking about the meeting, which made me think it was pleasant. They must have gotten along. Perhaps she could follow her own future if she had more friends.
まったくだ。ヒシアにはいつも苦労をかけている。
I went and answered honestly, and my words made Edu and Saku both shocked to the core.
成田が他人のことを
Saku's just over like, what the fuck?
気にかけているなんて。
Their eyes were wide open, and I could probably fit a fist in their mouths. Their expressions were exactly the same. And also, like, their eyes were open wide. I almost again mixed up the E in eyes and the W in Y. That's happened before in Hoshiori. Saku staggered and Eru backed away.
君たちは私を何だと思っているのかね。
変態。
The Master and the Knight were unified and verbally abusing me.
おとなし様とお会いした数日後、またもや駅前にて高崎様と出会いました。ばったりです。高崎様はどことなく自分と似たところを感じてしまうキャラです。超優秀な中心とかそういう。
ヒッシーとはすでにマブなので、もうエルチョンヌでいいですよ。
Not Erurun anymore. There. That was another way in which we were alike.
ではエル様、本日も遠征ですか？
I was actually returning from an investigation, but I didn't say that, of course. I was once again investigating Tokuno Yomi-sen Kurofunu Mikado's circumstances and preparation for the third act and final act, both. I'd known this since before we even came to Japan, but they were extremely well guarded. Through my hard work, I also found out that there was a non-political group behind them, and came across a certain title. GD, which stood for Geheimnisdoktrin. Oh boy, can't wait for Scott to butcher that one in a year's time. During the process, 2 cars were destroyed, a paper company was blown up by local terrorists, and the 3 illegal investigators and crackers I hired took a trip to the seabed. It's a world where it's foggy, just an inch ahead. How unpleasant.
もちのろんです。ヒッシーは本日もメイドの美食ですか？
本日もメイドの美食です。
Perhaps these encounters happened because a mysterious power was pulling us in the exact same way. We entered a bookstore. Ada went straight to the novel corner. Specifically the area full of flat, eye-catching books. Novels on the lighter side.
自分は日常系コメディを重点的に攻める口なのです。しかし昨今はコメディはどこのジャンルでもいまいち弾けないのだとか。
コメディが不人気なのですか。エロスと笑いは古来エンターテインメントの基本かとヒシア思いましたけれど。
不人気かどうかは市場の流れもありますので一概には言えません。現在の傾向というだけでしょう。ですがそれ以前の大きな問題として現在ははっきり言って過剰供給。熱心な読者でも出ている全てのシリーズをチェックするのは到底不可能。となると自分で読んで確かめる以前にネームバリューやイラスト、メディア展開の露出度など多くのフィルターを通さずにはおられない。その傍らで存在を気づかれることもなく消えてゆくあまたの良作があるかもしれないのです。
I wasn't knowledgeable about this, but her immense pain expression told me that it was a serious problem that couldn't be solved in a day or two.
というわけで、ジャンルそのものへのお布施として自分はコメディを絨毯爆撃的に買い込むのです。経済とはラブと並ぶ宇宙最強のパワーの一つ。売り上げが良ければシリーズ化もされ、新刊だってワシワシ出るのです。今は種でしかない無数の作品の中にいつか融飛する可能性は必ず眠っているのですから。
Miseru nodded and picked up many works after only looking at the covers. She was but the type to look them up beforehand, then come here to retrieve them. Miseru took so many books that seemed too much for her compact body, so I decided to help.
この機会に新聞屋も開拓しようと思ってるのですが、メイドさんは何かおすすめありますか？
ヒシアのおすすめですか？なかなか難しい質問ですね。
Question came out of nowhere, so I had to rack my brain a bit to look through my memories. Books I'd read in my life were few and far between. I lived a long time with few kinds of entertainment.
ヒシア、軽小説には詳しくないのですが、こういう本も文化的に近いのではないでしょうか。
ほほー。
剣豪小説です。特にこの某有名作家によるシリーズもの、剣客マーケティングなど。
This is a book I picked up and read while looking through Master Narita's things. It was a historical novel set in Japan. Back then, Japan was a place I'd never been to, so a story set in the land where Master Narita came from would greatly interested me.
一見パッとしないのに、実は最強パワーの主人公とか、ものすごいツンデレ武家娘などが出てくるお話です。軽小説という文化に近いのではないかと。
俺つえにツンデレですか。ポイント高いですね。コミカライズできそうですね。
あと、かなりエッチーです。ピンクです。
その上エッチーですか。これは深夜枠ですね。謎光線ビシバシで無修正版円盤がバカ売れですね。
Apparently, Mrs. Narita had begun reading it due to the man who raised him. That man. Looking back at it, I should have asked him for more about Master Narita. Maybe would have found out something embarrassing from when he was little.
エッチーで思い出しましたが。
My reminiscence was stopped by Miss Eru's words.
最近、成田の作へのセクハラが減ったのですよ。視界に作っぱいが入っても即揉みに行かないようになって。
The fact that he was trying to fondle them the moment they entered his sight made me sigh. Perhaps the situation was making it hard for the boobomatic soldier to act like that. Was putting on an act in front of his gentle fellow students and even killed the father of his childhood friend. Even if he didn't hesitate, he could still be hurt in the heart, could bleed even when the body was unharmed. Even so, he wouldn't cry. That was revenge. Selfish, sinful act. Master Narita could bear all the pain he ever felt.
一刀流切り落とし。
ぐえー。
We then somehow ended up talking about the samurai code and swordsmanship while walking around many of the town's shops right until it was dinner time.
これは困りましたね。もうバスが終わってます。
問題ないです。駅前からゴージャスにタクシーに乗って帰還するまで折り込み済みなのです。
さすがはクラウン1の作詞です。ヒシア、びっくりです。
ふんふんふん。頭脳力の勝利ですね。
I was a bit sad to part, but it had to happen. Today was very fulfilling. We'd even said a strange little phrase for our goodbye.
それでは、心は満ち足りている。
いささかも悔ゆるところはない。
It was a goodbye taken from a ninja-based work by the author of the Swordsman marketing series.
エル様、お気をつけて。
はい。ではまた。
軽く手を振り合って別れます。タクシーは駅前から大通りを南へ。見えなくなるまで見守っていました。おお、これはもしかすると、ちょっとしたことに気づきました。ヒシア、もしかしたら、友達と呼べる人ができたのかもしれません。エル様と楽しいひとときを過ごしてから慌ただしく数日が過ぎていきました。ヒシアの日課はいつもの早朝のメールチェックからです。限られた時間を有効に使うため、画面の右ではオートで新聞記事を流し、左でメールを処理していきます。メール1、成田様から受け取ったおとなし様の事故を図った犯人の遺留品が若い男性のものと判明。これは予想通り。スクールの学生に敵の手駒が隠れていると推測。メール12、県警内部の情報提供者からアンチハロー面に妙な動きがあるとの知らせ。詳しくは添付の資料を参照。メール27、トルコから中東関連の先取り情報。これは直接関わりなしですが、いくつか関連で値上がりしそうな株の購入を指示。メール40、所有している企業から研究成果の経過報告。ふむ、善と有望そうなので投資を増やしておきましょう。さあ、メールを片付けたら次はお掃除の時間です。本日のお掃除はこれぐらいにしといてやりましょう。無駄に大きい建物というのも厄介ですね。
Mumbled to pick up the cloth and broom. This was more of a hideout than a residence, but it was still a place my master used, and as a maid I had to keep it clean. Right when I took a breather, someone knocked on the entrance. A thick wooden door created a loud sound which resounded throughout the hall several times. Someone entered this church with curtained windows without letting me censor or even touch the front gate. Who could it be? Checked what was under my magical maid skirt. I played only after I was confident I could handle whoever
ここ
came.
は新聞じゃないですよ。
新聞ではない。私だ。
It was Master Narita. Him coming here wasn't out of our schedule for today, so it was quite unexpected. Wasn't in our schedule for today. Something happened. Would it negatively impact the plan?
テレビは置いてないし、宅配クリーニングは必要ないし、売るようなテレカやブランド品もありませんが。
いいから開けたまえ。
仕方ないですね。特別ですよ。
undid the lock and opened the door and bowed.
成田様、おサボりは良くないことかと存じます。
もちろん外出許可は取ってきたとも。
何か問題があったのですか？台本に修正が必要な事態なら詳しく伺いますが。
いや、別に問題はない。そういうわけではないのだ、ヒシア。
It didn't look like something serious had happened. Also, he seemed to be less talkative than usual, which made him look suspicious. But again, it was always suspicious. Master Narita's unwarranted confidence was one of the charming things about him. Now he looked like a Donaemon protagonist who was hiding a test he got a 0 on.
ヒシアに何か隠し事ですか？
言われのない非難はやめたまえ。隠し事など何もないとも。
Strange. The way his eyes were wavering was far too suspicious. However, it was strange that he would come here at an unplanned time while hiding something. What was wrong with him? Suddenly Miss Iru's words came back to me.
最近、成田の策へのセクハラが減ったのですよ。視界にサクッパイが入っても即揉みに行かないようになって。ようやく安心と本体が言ってました。
That's probably it. That might have been why Master Narita wasn't at his best. It was boob-mean deficiency. It took him over him and drove him to unconsciously seek a pair of mounds, which took him here to me in my bountiful chest. That had to be it. I'd been serving him for many years and knew his functions well enough to draw the conclusion. I knew Master Narita far too well, though I wasn't sure why he wasn't just using Ms. Otonashi's breasts instead.
わかりました。イシアは成田様のメイドですから。
I nodded understanding, and he put a hand on the entrance and pointed outside.
時にヒシア、少し街にでも出ないかね。
はい。
What? So you're into exhibitionism now? Oh, encoding overloading. Can you stop? Swear to God, it's happening way too fucking often again. What's happening? Maybe that'll help at least a bit. Annoyance. As he invited me outside, he seemed less confident than usual, which made me tilt my head in confusion. I successfully took Ishii outside. It seemed sudden, but I was so concerned about how she would end up that I felt I had to do this before the final 2 stages began.
それで成田様、本日の要件は何なのですか？
いや、特に要件はない。ここのところスクールの寮内生活を送っているので、時にはヒシアと一緒に食事でもと思ったのだよ。
本当はおっぱい欠乏症ですよね。
君は唐突に何を得体の知れない文言を口走っているのかね。
Hishia was wise and capable. Had she actually sensed what was actually bothering me? I was hesitating and conflicted. Which, in all honesty, wasn't like me at all. I had to accept it in this case. That was like a random flying thing, and I actually managed to catch it. Like some fly bastard. Like it was just flying past. Anyway, we were out of town now, but I didn't know how to begin talking about it. Normally she was the type to ask 10 questions before anyone could tell her one thing, so it was particularly difficult to confront her. She was also really stubborn. Was directing my question, the answer would be the same as it was when we were returning from the Katsuragi mansion. If that really was what she wanted, Narita had no right to reason to stop her, but...
エルが君と会ったと話していた。
Oh, that's adorable. with that, the Flagolino is gone. Surprisingly, I don't actually feel too queasy, quote unquote. I drank a whole bottle of this for like the first part of good old Kinkoi. Quite frankly, I don't like during the first part of Kinkoi. I was starting to feel very, very intoxicated. Like, sure, not intoxicated enough to really like fucking. Ah, yes. What the fuck did I do the day before? Just like very tipsy, basically. So this is adorable.
はい。ついこの間もお会いしました。お食事にお買い物にと、なかなかに興味深い時間を共に過ごさせていただいて。
それは良いことだ。友情とは人生を豊かにするスパイスなのだから。
It was a wonderful step forward. Hishia was severely lacking in normal relationship with people besides me.
そう。それでヒシア。
はい、成田様。
買い物でもするかね。うん。たまにはそれ以外の服を着てみるなどどうかね。
このメイド服以外ですか？成田様、本当におつむが大丈夫ですか
？I myself could feel that I was a lot more awkward and formal than normal. I had trouble speaking, as though my lips were frozen. Strange seeing how easy this was supposed to be. I was sad to say, once this is all over, live as you like.
何も問題はないと思う。それよりどうだね。年頃の乙女相応のおしゃれなどしてみないかね。
絶対に断じて断固として嫌だと申し上げたら。
検討ぐらいはしてみないか。
そこまで着替えさせたいのでしたら、成田様お得意のハムカツなんちゃらでもお使いになって言うこと聞かせればいいでしょう。
ハムレット12だよ。スクールの分類ではだが。君も知っての通り、私は意志を重んじる人間だ。自分のものであれ、他人のものであれ。自分の才能の一部とはいえ、意志を曲げてしまうこの力を好んで使いたいとは思わない。目的を果たすのには便利な道具ではあるがね。
では成田様が何かヒシアに買い与えてください。
私が
I'd given her the choice to buy what she wanted, yet she insisted on wearing something I chose. Left no choice, I used my own sense of beauty to choose a set of wonderful clothing that would suit her wonderfully.
よくこのようなコスプレ臭いファミレス風おっぱい強調服が売ってましたね。成田様、さすがおっぱい欠乏症です。
She let out a long sigh. Picking something to emphasize the breast was necessary to make Hishia look as beautiful as possible, but going by the reaction, I would have picked the wrong design. What a shame. I found it lovely.
気に入らないのであれば、これはやめて何か別の服を。
いえ、ヒシア、成田様からのプレゼント、喜んでいただきます。
I've realized something just now. There's a very strong possibility that in every single route she likes him, since it seems like her affection started when he saved her. Meaning that her case is similar to Karia in Sabbath of the Witch. And apparently Asuka and Aokana, considering what happens in Mashiro's round. That's still heartbreaking. Really want to be experienced with Aokana. But I have to download the game and play it down here, and I don't play visual novels outside of fucking recording. That's an issue. Oh well. She had a 180 and embraced clothing with a full smile on her face. She then fell silent. It seemed like she was somewhat tense. It made me feel like I was right next to a ticking time bomb.
はい。何でしょうか？
いや、なんではなく、調子でも悪いのかね。
Feels like for these like DLC routes, they focused more on these. Like, sure, they made new CGs, but they focused more on just cut-in art. Kind of like the casual outfit for Midori. I hesitantly asked that, which was very unlike me.
いいえ、調子が悪いのは成田様です。
突然何を言い出す？
She was sad one moment, then angry the next. She was so hard to read. Maiden's heart was akin to an autumn sky, and this made me understand that she too was a maiden.
こんなこと、プレゼントだなんて、今まで一度もしたことがないのに。
そうだったか。ふむ、そうかもしれないが。
成田様、やはりおっぱい欠乏症で間違いありません。
私はいつもと変わりないし、豊満が欠乏することなどありえない。なぜなら、豊かな曲線は常に私のここに燃えている。
残念ながら、成田様はイメージだけでおっぱい欲求を満たせられるような安い乳狂いではありません。
だいたい今の私は身近に。
Cut my words short when I realized that I hadn't fondled Saku's breasts in the past few days. Not even once!
なぜだ。そんなことがあるはずがない。音楽が恋の糧であるように、フォーマンとは人類が歓喜へ至る燃料なのだから。
I shivered, making Hishia put on a proud smile.
いっそ手近なところで補給してはいかがですか？
Saying that, she raised up her noticeable chest. Remember when I said that I felt far more affected during Kinkoi? It's slowly starting to set in. A bit, at least. It's still not as bad as it was at Kinkoi, but still, that's surprisable considering that I had more alcohol before the recording. Alcoholism! Saying that, she raised up. I've already read that one. My will was overwhelmed as my body moved like lightning and almost grabbed one of her mounds. I stopped myself just 2 centimeters away.
やめておこう。そんなものはこの私に必要ないと思う。
He is so panicky. I was close. I only barely stopped myself.
成田様がプレゼントだなんて、こんな真似をされたのは本当に初めてです。明日は空から銃弾でも降ってきかねません。
Dodge. All I can think of right now is just the wrong animation video. That's just like Toho players. It's like they're waiting at a bus stop. It's raining. Like his weird OC takes out an umbrella, looks over to the person who doesn't have one, holds it up over to him. He's like, no, don't worry. Okay. He looks back to the rain. Steps out of the bus stop. Steps into the rain. Starts dodging every single fucking raindrop like he was fucking Toho. As Toho music starts playing and arrives at the other side, the weird OC just stands there like. And turns into like power tokens. That video's great. Actually, I need to send it to like that gun freak, like that gun enthusiast I was talking to earlier, because they asked me like, "Hey, do you know how to get how to access the Toho games?" But, yeah, sure. I guess I can quickly find out. Like an old video. Where? And now the person is very much trying to play all the Toho games, and they are seemingly stuck on 2 still, I think. Maybe they already moved on, who knows? But yeah, they started like from the fucking first Toho, you know, the fucking breakout style. Highly responsive to prayers.
思わず鼻歌でも歌ってしまいそう。慎み深い次女なのに自分が抑えられない。いただいた服を胸にして不思議なくらい足取りだって軽い。このまま月まで歩いていけそう。というか歩いて行ってしまいたい。なんて落ち着かない気分のままで成田様と買い物をします。エル様に教わった店で食事もいただきました。心よい時間はあっという間に過ぎるもの。そろそろ教会へ戻りましょう。
かの店の生ハムのパスタはなかなかのものだった。老舗というだけはある。
ご満足いただけたようで何よりです。成田様が学生の身分でなければお酒もいただきたかったのですが。
次の機会があればという。
It was common for Master Narita to become less wordy when speaking of the
この
future.
服大切にいたします。もっともこんなコスプレ臭い服街中で着るわけはありませんが。
違う服にした方が良かったのではないかね。
成田様が選んだ服が良かったのです。着られる服はまた別の。
着られる服か。もう少しファッションについても学ばねばならないな。
A part of me was glad that he picked clothes I couldn't wear outside.
妙に歯切れ悪い。成田様の姿がおかしい。わかりやすすぎです。こんな時だけとても不器用。自分で選べとそうおっしゃりたかったのでしょ。忠誠の印。このメイド服も脱いでしまって新しく始めればいいのだと。本当になんて人の心のわからない方だろう。成田様は女のファッションについて勉強するつもりがおありなのですか？
この世に学ぶ価値のない事柄などないのだよ。
では今度昨今の女子のファッションについて1時間で学べるテキストを制作し送付しましょう。症状でもわかる女子トレンドです。
それは楽しみだな。
かつて成田様に従うという道を選びました。そうする必然はなかった。選ぶべき未来が何もなくて選んだ道です。けれど今は間違いなく幸せです。汚れた道でも罪深い場所でもここにあることがヒシアの幸福なのだと今夜よくわかりました。成田様に自由でいいと言われて考えてそう思ったのです。ですから成田様がどんな寝言をおっしゃったところでヒシアのやることもいる場所も変わらないのです。その先がこの道の行き着く先がどんなものだとしても。
Like, you gotta fucking respect Hishia for her loyalty. Like, yes, she doesn't, like, 100% want him to follow this kind of path. But she knows that nothing she could say would ever persuade him otherwise. So even if he wants her to not follow him on this path, she'll just fucking ignore all his opinions and go anyways.
やはり君は完璧なメイドだな。
You might also realize that my will... You might have also realized that my will wouldn't change. Or maybe simply relaxed. Regardless, he gave me a warm smile. Whatever the reason for it, I found joy in it. The greatest bliss. My greatest bliss was Master Narita's smile after all.
もちろんでございます。
Just as always, it gave the most perfect English style maid curtsy. I ended up not doing what I'd left the academy to do. Half resigned, I merely accepted what happened today and went with the flow. That was half the reason why, by the time that we returned to the church, it was dark outside. It was time to return to the academy, but instead I was merely wasting time. The time I was spending here felt precious, and I felt it hard to leave.
成田様、何かお飲みになりますか？コーヒーから紅茶、ハーブティーにミルクに海洋深層水。イシアの道楽でたくさん揃えておりますが。
As idle, she called
い
out
や
to me.
いい。そろそろ戻らねばならない。
そうですか。欲しくなったら言ってください。
He thought that refusing her offer would give me the drive to stand up, but that didn't happen. Instead, I merely continued sitting where I was.
ゆっくりぐったりしていかれたらよいかと。たまにはそういう時間も必要でしょう。
私の正体はいずれ気づかれる。時間は有限なのだ。
そろそろバスも終わります。どうせなら泊まっていかれてはいかがです？素晴らしい段ボール寝床を用意いたしますよ。
夜には戻ると届けてある。
Hishia should have known well that staying here would attract unwanted suspicion. Since when had she begun telling such jokes? She was nothing like she was when we first met.
成田様、今日は何かにつけて不調のようでしたが、お体は大丈夫ですか？
私とてそういう日があるものだよ。
成田様はスクールに入ってから毎日食べていたヒシアのお料理を食べてないので、ついに身も心もおかしくなってしまわれたのかと思ったのですが。
問題はないとも。味はもちろん栄養バランスも見た目の美しさもよく考えられた素晴らしい食事がスクールでは毎日提供されている。
ほう。
This perfect mind of mine actually wasn't much of a cook before meeting me. No matter how potent, any weapon was useless if it couldn't blend into this human settlement. Due to that, she'd been taught how to act human, but all that was really desired of her was the skill to kill and survive. She was much like a gun focused solely on her function, but she learned how to do her chores, behave, drive, communicate, and joke like a normal person. It was almost miraculous. The change from a child to adult happened in but a mere few years, and it was nothing short of amazing. However, though there were accidents in what mankind did, there were no miracles, which was now as a result of her hard work and inevitability. A bit over a year had passed since she had become serious about cooking. She began looking forward to visiting Japan, and I could only guess that she wanted to learn the tastes of this country. But why had she desired to find out the taste of Japan?
料理はいろいろと覚えたのかね？
今、そんな話してねえです。イシアの料理とスクールの料理と、成田様にはどちらがよろしいのですか？
待ちたまえ。今そんな話をしていただろうか。
ヒシアが今しているではないですか。何の問題もないでしょう。
日々の暮らしで舌に馴染んだ味と新たな味。なかなか甲乙つけがたいものなのだよ。
Picked my words carefully. I felt that I had to. In actuality, the food given to us at the academy was made by specialists who were top of their fields. Not even Hishia could match their cooking and pure taste.
それで、どちらが上なのですか？これはノーマーシー。どちらかが死ぬまで続く殴り合いです。決定してください。
Whoops. My sensitive instincts told me that a single mistake here could lead me to a free fall off a cliff. I never would have imagined I would be so in danger in my own hideout. I had to think this through. This was Hishia I was talking with. She wouldn't accept the vague answer.
そう、例えるなら、ヒシアの手料理は、毎夜変わらず空を飾る北極星。スクールの食事は、決まった季節にのみ現れる星座というか。
ブーブーブーブーブーブーブーブーブー。
それぞれに違った良さが。
ブーブーブーブー。
無論、どちらか一方を選ぶなら、慣れ親しんだヒシアの手料理に軍配が上がるとも。
Honestly heard to say that, but a moment later I noticed her grin and realized that it was a trap.
成田様が言葉に詰まるなんて、非常に珍しいいいものが見られました。ラッキーです。
She was merely playing around. Women are such witches. Then again, I was the one who fell for something so childish. I truly wasn't myself today.
スクールで提供される食事には一切の問題がないとして、成田様の不調の原因は何でしょう？
Oops. Indeed. But I've been through countless trials these past 7 years, and I wasn't weak enough for a mere elephant's foot to do anything to
ヒシ
me.
ア、そういう風に弱っている成田様を前にも一度見たことがあります。
それは
あの夜の
あれは
あれこれ言うつもりはないですよ。
Like she was saying, she didn't seem to care. I was the only one who was bothered.
そう悪くない思い出ですし。
She said it casually, but I didn't know how to react. He noticed that I was troubled, smiled, and changed the subject.
やはり成田様は深刻な事態にあると思います。そう、深刻なおっぱい欠乏症。
そんな病気はない。
She made a serious face just to say that nonsense. Seemed to be more talkative than usual. Was she hungry for a conversation partner now that I moved into the academy? I relaxed and let the piece take me. 2 large semi-spheres entered my vision. Whoops.
精神疲労時のおっぱい補給に。Hishia P.
Hishias! I kind of have to pick this as the title, don't I? That's my duty, my solemn duty. She was sticking out her chest right at me. I already knew this well, but looking at it again, she was definitely not short of volume. Despite being bound by both her maid uniform and bra, slowly shook like the waters of a lake, stirred by a thrown pebble. That was dangerous. Almost grabbed him.
ヒシア、どこでこんなつつましくない真似を覚えてくるのだね。
おやおや、成田様ともあろうものが。JK になった娘がお化粧しだして驚く、堅物のお父さんのようなことをおっしゃるとは。
いや、しかし。
だいたい、つつましくなさどで言うと、ところ構わず女の胸をもみしだく成田様の方が、人間としてダメレベルに最悪ですよ。
It's so... I'm enjoying this round. It's great.
私の行為は信仰の発露なのだよ。
Hey, come on, express your faith right now, she says.
遠慮はいりません、成田様。ほらほら、柔らかいですよ。ぽよんぽよんですよ。安らぎのふわふわ夢枕ですよ。
やめたまえ、ヒシア。その恐るべき狂気を今すぐ収めたまえ。
She supported her breast with her hands, put my hands in a cross, and resisted her with the desperation of a vampire facing a crucifix. Wait, hold on, so he's probably like more doing like something like this, but all I imagine is that he's just standing like...
我々はブーブス。抵抗は無意味だ。成田様は谷間に埋まる。
She now approached me while half quoting a certain long-running sci-fi series. This was bad. Using power that could tear my muscles apart, I tried to distance myself from the soft body. However, the pull she had was almost magnetic. When I backed away at about 0.5 millimeters per second, she approached at 2 centimeters per second. Oh no! She was far too fast!
成田様、観念召されい!
The next moment, my desire completely defeated my mind as I sank my face into the space between her breasts.
勝ちました。
I looked up to see Hishia proudly looking down at me, but I didn't have the mental capacity to care anymore. This warmth, this softness, this roundness, this firmness, this volume, this scent, this pressure on my face, this hasty heartbeat, this faint layer of cloth, this excitement for the beauty it was hiding, and this happiness. Barely thinking became akin to an animal in front of its den, rubbing my face as if to find a way inside. The bountiful chest was akin to a breathing ocean.
例えば、いつかこの地球という星が失われ、人類が広漠たる宇宙をさまようことになったとしても、故郷はここにあるのだ。
Hishia gently caressed my hair. The comfort the hand gave me made me feel guilty.
ヒシアに甘えてはならない。これ以上、何も背負わせてはならないのだから。とか、思っているんでしょう、成田様。
どうしてわかる？
She read my thoughts word for word, and I couldn't do nothing. And I could do nothing but mumble that with my face still buried in her chest.
女の胸には心を読む力があるのです。胸にすがる男の人の考えなど簡単に分かってしまうものですよ。
まさか。
Though in a way, she might have been right.
君は完璧なメイドだな。
もちろんでございます、成田様。
ありがとう。私の心は法悦を体験した聖人にも等しく、真まで清められた。
それはそこまで喜ぶとかドン引きですが。
しかし、これ以上は甘えられない。
Took one last very long breath and put myself away from the bountiful chest.
イシアは別に構いませんよ。
それが君の意志ならば。
Did Shinri Narita love Mori Hishia? Yes, it was definitely love. We supported each other for a long part of this journey. Though it was intense, to feel a passion for her akin to a coal fire. I watched over her like a father.
違うとおっしゃるのですか？
ヒシアはまだ多くを知らない。
Did Mori Hishia love Shinri Narita? No. It was most likely just trust for a father figure that she was mistaking for love. She still didn't know how vast the world was, or what it meant to make choices. There was no need to seal away her potential futures at this point. Thus Shinri Narita couldn't reciprocate.
昼の贈り物の服は失敗だったな。また改めて何かを贈ろう。
女への贈り物失敗だなんて。
いや、そういう意味ではなく、君には本当に苦労をかけているから。
Hishia looked back at the old closet with the gift in hand.
代わりなんて必要ありません。
では代わりとは言わない。追加だ。主人の行為は受け取りたまえ。今度は失敗しないよう、ヒシアに欲しいものをあらかじめ尋ねておくことにしよう。その方がヒシアも不要品を抱え込まずと済むだろう。
まったく、成田様は本当に。追加でくださるというなら、今いただいてもよろしいでしょうか。
For some reason she seemed more serious than I ever saw her. Despite that, she was also red to her ears.
今すぐには何も用意できないが。
いいえ、何も用意する必要などありません。ヒシアは成田様をいただきたいのです。
それは。
I quickly understood what she meant and it greatly perplexed me. Ignoring my state, she approached me like a sneaking cat. With a flushed face and damp eyes, she looked at me with an allure that made her seem like not herself.
嫌ですか？
She asked that after grabbing my shoulders and keeping me in place. Still, it wouldn't be hard for me to escape.
それよりも戸惑っているよ。どうして突然そんなことを？
嫌ならわざわざ気にかけたりしなければいいのに。
Was she referring to the present? She's doing this because I wanted her to be free.
いいえ、半端に助けてしまうぐらいなら、そもそも最初から手なんて差し伸べなければよかったのに。
私は自分の身勝手な生き方を通すしかできない男だ。
そんなこととうに知っております。
Hishia embraced me again.
迷いがないのだね。
She replied to me with her usual voice.
当たり前じゃないですか。ヒシアは成田様から何もかも教わったんですから。生徒は己を作り上げる旅。だから迷わずに進めと言われました。
そんなこともあったな。
When we first met, our bond was awkward. And there was finally trust between us. Hishia chose the relationship of master and servant. We became the only people we knew. Our solitude was broken. The long journey continued, and we almost lost our lives countless times. If I'd been alone, I probably would have collapsed somewhere along the way. To Shinri Narita, this was a path of vengeance, while to Mori Hishia, it was a pilgrimage to create herself.
本当は迷っていたんだと思います。ずっと。自分でもよく分かっていなかっただけで。
今はそうではない。
そう見えませんか？成田様がいらぬことをするからですよ。
The grimace on her face as she tasted the lunch she was making. The smile she made as she looked up at the rainbow in the sky after the rain passed. The way she rubbed her eyes in satisfaction after working until really late at night. The way she bowed without a single flaw. Looked at her back at the times recorded in my memory.
理解できたら観念してください。
そうしよ
あ、
う。何をキャットボムでも食らったように目を丸くしている？
割と予想外なお答えだったもので。
君もまだまだ人の心が分かっていないのだね。
成田様にそれを言われるとヘドが出ます。
Feeling breathing in this chest, the feeling I'd lost 7 years ago. Thought they can treat other people as they were probably much alike. Before we knew love, we recognized each other as lacking. That was why I'd always hesitated myself. I didn't understand it just like her. Things were different now. I rubbed her head like it was something precious, and she smiled at me in an alluring way. When I'd first met her, Hishia was but a weapon, and she didn't know of bashfulness. But now she was akin to a voluptuous goddess, embracing all that I was.
照れないでください。困ります。
そうではないよ。出会った頃のことを思い出していた。
遠くへ来ましたね。
そうだな。
We'd crossed sandy deserts and wastelands, as well as blood storms and bloodbaths.
随分時間がかかってしまいました。
それでも私は自分のなすべき道を行くよ。
Shindy Night would act out this revenge tragedy until the end, and the actors who lost their role were all fated to vanish from the stage.
ヒシアもヒシアのしたいようにいたしますから、成田様もどうか最後までお心のまま。
君は素晴らしいレディーになった。
ではもっと素晴らしくして差し上げます。成田様、お飲み物はコーヒーでよろしいですか？
ひどく喉が渇いている。冷たいものをもらおう。
かしこまりました。すぐに用意を。
Feeling would stay within this chest. There were things that had to be done after all. Silently embracing the transience and precious dream, we would spend our time on the stage in our own roles. Shindy Night would be the avenger, while Mori Hishia would be a maid. We hadn't put it into words, however. We could both understand it clearly. She had bought drinks ahead of time, and brought something cold to me.
お待たせしました、成田様。
ありがとう。
The dewed glass was somewhat chilly. Upon taking it, I instantly drank about half of the full volume.
シア、これを飲み次第スクールに戻る。車の用意をしてくれ。
It was time to return to the battle I had to take part in.
いいえ、それはできません、成田。
For some reason, he should fight me, but he's still not awoken from the Midsummer Night's dream.
シア、君の
何をおっしゃってるんですか、成田様。シャワーを浴びたばかりで夜風に当たって風邪でもひいたらどうしますか？乾くまでお待ちください。主の体調管理も優秀な次女のお仕事のうちですから。
なるほど。
She laughed and sat next to me.
まったく、君は完璧なメイドだな。
もちろんでございます、成田様。
As we huddled so close to each other, I understood that the dream would still continue. The time I spent with Hishia was enjoyable. I could still continue to explore this ephemeral vision, just a little longer. My regrets have vanished. She knew night that would continue the coming stage at its fullest. I'm really enjoying this right now.
成田様をスクールまで車で送り届けて教会に戻ったヒシアは満ち足りた心地で胸に手を当てていました。
This entire thing is just so fucking sweet. I'm like Hishia was high in my character ranking before this. Honest to God, she might even, like, to me, rival Saku now. Like, at the very least, she passed by Mitri and Eru. Like, clean. I might actually put her above Sakura, surprisingly. Let's see how it ends next time. Hope you guys just want to see you next time. Bye-bye.